Chapter 1354, The Long, Lonesome Days. Chapter 1354, The Long, Lonesome Days. The void was hazy with countless pieces of rocks and broken stars. Dangers hid everywhere and generated from time to time. The land here was endless and ever desolate. It was like a world that had been abandoned for billions of years. There was no aura or any streak of living beings. Shiyang and Audrey were sitting on a rhombus piece of a broken lunar star. They looked at the endless void, their faces low-spirited. Shiyang had refined this broken lunar star to make it a temporary battleship. Using his god power, it moved fast like a meteor shooting across the sea domain of nihility. With the current speed of this lunar star, it could travel through a star area that was more than 1 billion miles in a day. However, they didn't know how long they had been riding on this piece of rock. They got no harvest along the way, anyway. They had encountered nothing precious or any creature. It seemed like only the two of them existed in this immensely vast and borderless sea domain of nihility. The lonely, isolated feelings gradually churned in their hearts. They thought that they would never see hope or the other end of this place. In the beginning, the two still talked and encouraged each other every day. Then, they reduced the talking as they saw the dispirited gleam in each other's eyes. This place had thin earth and heaven energy that they could use to cultivate. However, it was weak, so it was really difficult to use the energy here to advance their cultivation further. One day, Audrey's cold eyes slightly brightened. She still wore a green dress and her beautiful face didn't have a speck of dust. A faint halo protected her sexy body. "How long has it been?" She mumbled as if she was talking to herself. Shiyang opened his closed eyes as he heard her, his face bitter and astringent. "There's no sun, moon, or stars. We don't have the concept of time here. I don't know how long it has been. But I think it should have been more than a while. Before we got here, my third sky of incipient god realm hasn't steadied, but now, I'm good. I wonder what is going on in our world. Had Hui destroyed our world? I don't know where my mother teleported to. If she was here, why haven't we met yet?" Audrey hadn't talked to Shiyang for a while. And now, when she began talking, it seemed like she couldn't stop. "Sigh, if I'd known we would be delivered here, staying back there wouldn't have been a bad choice maybe." Shiyang was surprised. "If you stayed there, perhaps you wouldn't be killed, but your soul would have a soul seal that doesn't belong to you. You want to be its puppet." Audrey was low-spirited. She stooped and sighed. No matter what, she was still very mesmerizing. "According to you, the experts at the immortal realm used to come here to train themselves. How could they get in? And, how do we get out of here?" asked Shiyang with a frown. "Although my mother is an expert at the immortal realm, she's also the matriarch, so she had to manage the tribe. She hasn't had a chance to visit the sea domain of nihility yet. She told me that those immortal realm experts had come to the end of our world and crossed a strange river to get to this place." Audrey furrowed her brows and remembered her mother's words. She explained, "The warriors coming here from our world have a special compass, which navigates our world. That's how they can save themselves from getting lost and end up finding the way home." Shiyang gave a bitter smile. "It's tragic that we don't know the direction. We don't know where our world is. We're like headless flies flying aimlessly." This area was misty and they couldn't measure time or check the direction. They were left with endless loneliness and coldness. If a warrior got lost here, loneliness and isolation would nibble his or her heart. He would eventually lose his mind and sink into the eternal darkness. In this area, despair was someone's biggest enemy. If he couldn't defeat his despair, his will was going to wear out. In a hopeless situation, he would think about negative results. Then, he would fall into bewilderment and gradually get weaker until he consumed all of his vitality. "It's strange. My mother said that this area is extremely perilous. Dangers are hidden everywhere. Why are we still safe and sound?" Audrey was curious. Shiyang couldn't explain this. Elder Spark of the God Clan had visited the sea domain of nihility, but he had just surveyed the outskirts of the sea domain. He got the celestial ice jade flake there. According to him, the sea domain was extremely dangerous. Except for real experts at the immortal realm, The others could hardly survive. However, during this time, besides the isolation, loneliness, and coldness, Yang and Audrey hadn't actually faced any danger that could make them perish. This filled their hearts with doubts. Is it really the sea domain of nihility? Could we be wrong? Yang sounded astounded. No, we can't be wrong, Audrey confirmed. See, pieces of broken stars, dregs of the asteroids, the void caves, and turbulent energy. They are the features of the sea domain of nihility. I guess it's because of our location that we haven't encountered any danger. Maybe we're in a very special area in the sea domain. Which place? Yang was surprised. I don't know. But I've heard from my mother that the sea domain of nihility still has some relatively safe areas that the experts could rest in for a short time to adjust their conditions. Anyway, she also said that there wouldn't be anything to harvest in those areas. The precious items wouldn't appear there, explained Audrey. Why is that? Asked Yang. She said that there's so many immortal realm experts have visited the sea domain of nihility to explore. They had finished searching for precious items in the safe zones a long time ago. Nothing was left. Only the areas with a lot of death traps could have treasures that they haven't discovered yet, answered Audrey in a low-pitched voice. Suddenly, she got up. Her creamy, straight legs were so attractive. Her pair of clear and deep eyes zoomed over to the further area. She sighed. Tianxie said that we've been living in desolate's incipient extent. That world isn't a real universe. I think the creatures from a real universe used to come to this area. But because it's unimaginably vast, it's hard to meet them. She turned her head to look at Yang and contemplated. The precursors of Imperial Dark Tribe used to meet the aliens in the sea domain of nihility. They belonged in a real universe. It's a secret in our tribe. It's not to be told to the others, but we're in a special circumstance. It's okay if I tell you now. The creatures from a real universe. Were they absolute beginning creatures? Yang was astonished. I don't think so, Audrey shook her head. According to the records from our precursors, although they looked strange, they weren't as giant as the absolute beginning creatures. My precursor couldn't communicate with them. They met and then parted shortly after that. My precursor guessed that they were really strong and not weaker than him. At that time, he was at second sky of immortal realm. Yang kept silent. He got the truth for a long time ago. He knew that the world he had dwelled in was just desolate's incipient extent. It was the world that desolate had created. It wasn't a real universe. The sea domain of nihility had gotten rid of desolate. Thus, it wasn't strange if other creatures could come here. In this immense sea of stars, if the absolute beginning creatures like desolate, devour, or Hui could exist, there were other living beings. Perhaps they weren't as powerful as absolute beginning creatures, but they were clearly strong. Theoretically, it wasn't strange if the precursor of the Imperial Dark Tribe could encounter some aliens in the sea domain of nihility. It was just that they were wandering in an extremely vast area and they couldn't meet any strange creature. As thoughts crossed his mind, Yang kept quiet for a long time and then said, "We can't stay idle like this. Perhaps we should seek the dangerous areas proactively. We can find the precious treasure in the place that could threaten our lives. We could even see the other creatures. If they stayed in this safe zone, even if they could rest for 100 years, they wouldn't find the way home. If they couldn't meet any other creature to learn about this area, they were never going to escape this place. It's a good idea. But we don't even know where the dangerous areas are. Even if we want to go there, we have to find a suitable area," said Audrey begrudgingly. "If you had told me we could have a bigger chance if we entered the dangerous areas, we would have gone there a long time ago. While riding the meteor, I could feel that some places were very dangerous. I tried to avoid those areas." When they were moving, Yang had released his soul consciousness to sense around. He recognized many areas with the terrifying energy fluctuations. The auras of those areas made him feel his life was threatened. Thus, he didn't notify Audrey and avoided to ensure his own safety. And now, listening to Audrey's explanation, he finally knew that they must take risks to find the right direction. They had to proactively jump into those death traps. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Audrey rebuked and blamed him for wasting their time. You couldn't endure the dangers there. I just wanted to keep you safe. Shi Yang gave her a forced smile. You're at first sky of incipient god realm. I'm sure you can't survive the lands I've sensed. Let alone Audrey. Even Shi Yang knew those areas were unpredictably dangerous, that he couldn't be sure about his own safety. Thus, he didn't tell Audrey. You disdain me. Audrey's eyes turned cold. All right, we should keep going. When my soul consciousness spots the danger, we will get there. I hope you can perform your best and surprise me at that time. Shi Yang smiled relaxedly. Audrey snorted. Well, I'm one of the warriors with the origins. Even though my realm is low, I can protect myself. I won't depend on you. Nothing could be better than. Chapter 1355, The Asteroid Current. Chapter 1355, The Asteroid Current. Shi Yang opened his eyes while riding on the transparent piece of a broken lunar star and looking in a direction, his face stern. The chaotic energy waves came from that direction. World-destroying explosions boomed everywhere with space blades that tore the void. Shi Yang felt his soul shiver. Shi Yang was sure that the area his soul consciousness had sensed was filled with dangers. Audrey said that they could only meet the other creatures in perilous zones like that. Also, they could have a chance to get marvelous, precious materials or items in the sea domain of nihility. Did you find something? After the previous talk, Audrey had noticed Shi Yang's moves discreetly. Seeing his face turn stern, she wasn't frightened. She cheered up. A beautiful light glowed on her jade-like face. While she was mumbling, she stood up. Her creamy thighs moved and she was like an agile green butterfly. This area was filled with the broken pieces of the planet, like a big speck of dust floating in outer space. From a very far area ahead of them, they could see the thick shower of brilliant meteors shooting toward an area where the chaotic energy congregated. The lightning struck like a giant, outraged dragon soaring up into the sky. The thunder rumbled and shook people's souls. The sharp blades were like scythes cutting the world. They could even cut massive pieces of broken stars like cutting soft tofu. Those sharp blades were Space Blade, famous for its swift and fierce nature. Although they weren't made by any experts with space power Upanishad, they were much keener than a blade that Dekalos could create with his best ability. Shi Yang had no doubt that those blades could dismember the experts at the immortal realm easily. That area. He wore a heavy face and pointed at the area where the shooting stars were congregating. He discreetly urged his energy and then turned to Audrey. Are you ready? Audrey's beautiful eyes gazed at the place. She looked surprised and frightened. Pondering for a while, she nodded resolutely. I'm ready. Shi Yang didn't say more. The rhombus lunar star underneath them turned into a cold and clear moonlight and accelerated toward that dangerous area. Audrey's breathing became short. Her milky breasts thrust out and radiant light filled her eyes. Flows of chaotic, fierce energy shot like sparks or like millions of fireflies. Those remnants of energy were visible and were shooting sharply like a fierce shower of steel needles. In the beginning, she didn't use the god power to create a protective, light cage. She acted as if she was mad at Shi Yang, so she tried to be bold and use her body to resist the energy. Thus, the sparks shot over and destroyed her tight dress, creating fingernail-sized holes and revealing lots of her white, mesmerizing skin. When they came near, Audrey found that those shooting meteors were actually giant asteroids. Those cosmic rocks had so many colors. Some were garnet, some were orange-red, and some even looked like diamonds. They existed in various shapes, though. Those asteroids didn't come from the area they were in, but from another direction that was misty gray with billions of floating asteroids like a sea. At this moment, those asteroids seemed to be activated and given life. They moved, grouped, and shot toward them. It looked like some unknown force was controlling them and making them fly fast toward the dark area. There were millions of them. While they were flying, they collided and exploded. The shockwaves of those explosions were enough to crush first sky of immortal realm experts. The sparks that hit Audrey were the shockwaves of the asteroid's explosions. Although they were just shockwaves, they were so sharp that they cut a lot of holes on her dress. Shi Yang was standing with Audrey on the broken lunar star. They were still far away from those currents of asteroids. He turned around and looked at Audrey's new clothes with great interest. He grinned and arched his brows. "Well, your new dress looks really nice. I like it a lot. Don't change. Let me behold for a while." Ha. Many mysterious areas of Audrey's jade-like skin were exposed under the holes on her clothes. They made people lose their minds in them. Shi Yang felt his passion rising high when he saw her perfect bosom, thighs, waists, and even her butt cheeks. His eyes became nakedly hot as he kept grinning evilly. "Go die." A dim, frosting flame flew out of her wet lips with her life aura. It immediately hit Shi Yang's chest. The icy aura of the extremely cold heaven flame was like a bucket of ice water that poured on his passion and extinguished it. Even his hair turned into the sharp icicles. "You deserve that." Audrey looked cold. Her bright eyes showed that she was amused. Her agile body moved. Countless shadows of departed souls twirled around her body and shielded her from Shi Yang's naked gaze. She spun 3 rounds at her spot. The departed souls around her vanished. When she reappeared, she wore a dark blue dress. The end of her brow twitched as she tried to press down her smile. "Well, did your flame of lust extinguish?" "Not yet." Shi Yang didn't change his mind. As his soul flickered, the ice on his body melted. A cluster of icy flame bounced back to Audrey. She swallowed it. It was her origin's heaven flame. Boom. All of a sudden, the lunar rock underneath them accelerated. It didn't listen to Shi Yang's control anymore and headed toward that dark area at a breakneck speed. Just like millions of rocks around them. Audrey was astounded. She didn't quarrel with Shi Yang anymore and screamed. "It seems that some force is pulling those asteroids. We're affected too. We're attracted to that area. Don't try to be bold. Use the god power to create a protective barrier with many layers to cover your body." Shi Yang's face was heavy and stern. He sat down on the rock and said, "Come to me. Being closer is better. The shockwaves from the asteroid explosions are enough to crush your bones. You should be careful." As soon as he finished, 2 giant asteroids collided around 10,000 meters away from them. The energy from that collision boomed like nuclear warheads impacting. The shockwaves seemed to distort even the void and created a chain reaction. The floating rocks near them also exploded. The shockwaves didn't cease and headed toward Shi Yang and Audrey. Audrey wanted to snap back 1 or 2 sentences, but then, she felt the formidable shockwaves. Her exquisite face turned cold immediately. She zoomed toward Shi Yang like lightning and sat next to him. The emerald light cages swayed and covered her body when her god power was urged. As the princess of Imperial Dark Tribe, she had mastered the special soul power Upanishad of Imperial Dark Tribe. Her sensibility was sharp and she always had a clear grasp of the attacking power. She understood that the coming shockwaves could harm her body, thus, she was resolute and didn't say a word. She decided to move to Shi Yang to seek protection. "Star Shield." Shi Yang screamed and 10 starlight beams shot out of his hands. Those starlight bands were like ropes coiling around the surrounding asteroids and pulling them toward the 2 to create a rock wall. The asteroid wall shook several times and then subsided. Shi Yang retreated his energy. The asteroids dispersed and then continued to flow forward. Audrey looked astonished as she said, "There's a wisp of a feeble soul inside the rock over there. It's not a creature. I think it's the broken piece of some divine weapon." She looked at an asteroid in front of them. That asteroid was as big as a small life star. It had an unusual octagonal shape with dark brown colors. It looked like a massive plate. Some short grass grew on its surface, which made it unusual compared to the other barren asteroids around. "Let's take a look." Shi Yang pulled himself together to observe. He was surprised. Then, he urged the lunar rock they were riding on and doubled its speed. They glided through many asteroids around and headed toward the strange rock Audrey had seen. 15 minutes later. Rumble. The lunar rock landed on that dark brown asteroid. Shi Yang swiftly landed on the surface of the rock. His mind flickered and sent the soul consciousness that could worm into every corner to all the small cracks on the surface of the asteroid. After a while, he was bewildered. A strange light shot out from his eyes. Audrey suddenly appeared next to him, her brows arching. She stepped toward a place. The place I've sensed is over there. Shi Yang didn't speak. He looked pensive and followed her like her shadow. This dark brown asteroid had a lot of a strange kind of weed. The grass was around 1/2 meter tall and it was as sharp as the saw with a tough vitality. This kind of peculiar, deep green grass filled every corner of the asteroid. At first glance, it was like a green carpet. While the asteroid was flying, the tufts of grass swayed gently like waving hands. They looked so strange, indeed. Immediately, Audrey's beautiful legs stopped moving. She bent her body to look at a dark hole on the surface of the asteroid. The hole was big enough for one person to jump into. It was so dark that she couldn't see anything. All she could do was hear the wind howling ear-piercingly. That feeble soul is right in the cave. I'm going there to check. Audrey turned around and looked at Shi Yang to ask for his opinion. Hold on, Shi Yang frowned and said, it doesn't feel right. I don't know why I got a terrible feeling as soon as I landed. I've just used my soul consciousness to cover the entire asteroid. I found that this asteroid has only that cave. Also, it allows only one person to get in at a time. What do you mean? Audrey didn't get his idea. Use your soul consciousness to check this area carefully. Can you feel that it's like a soul filament spreading everywhere? Shi Yang mumbled. Soul filament spreading? Audrey was surprised. She pulled herself together to sense. She vaguely felt something wrong, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. Green grass. That's the green grass here. Shi Yang discolored and screamed. Even though the green grass could be tougher, it couldn't survive here. The tufts of grass we see on this asteroid is the soul filaments. They are the feeble soul filaments. The soul fluctuation you've sensed should come from these things. Not true. The soul fluctuation comes from this cave. Audrey shook her head. It appeared as soon as we landed on this rock. The soul fluctuation comes from the cave after that. Perhaps it's trying to lure you and me to the cave, said Shi Yang skeptically. Could it be like that? Audrey felt funny. She thought that Shi Yang was overthinking it. She thought that it was impossible that something could trap them in this desolate sea domain of nihility. We should test it first. Shi Yang looked gingerly. Chapter 1356, Using Blood to Create the Body. Chapter 1356, Using Blood to Create the Body. Shi Yang and Audrey stood by the cave and concentrated on the dark entrance of the cave. They felt a strange chill filling their hearts. Audrey calmed down. A tender light glowed on her face. Her soul altar was like a mirror without a speck of dust. As she had reached incipient God realm and fused with the heaven flames of God-blessed mainland's origin, she was definitely stronger than many people. When she focused on sensing, she could see that something was wrong. You're cautious, indeed, Audrey said to him, her eyes surprised. You're right. That kind of green grass is everywhere and they have feeble soul fluctuations. I told you that we should check it first. Shi Yang talked seriously. How do I check it? Audrey quietly stepped back and stayed away from the cave. She could feel a little safer as she had stayed away from the danger. Simple. Shi Yang rose one hand. A small cut appeared on his left hand and a drop of beautiful ruby blood oozed out. That drop of blood released red halos as it contained thick life energy fluctuations. Swoosh. The drop of blood burned and emitted wires of blood chi like the spider web. It was like a great artist using a brush and sketching Shi Yang's drawing in the middle of the air. Shortly after, the life energy in the drop triggered and surged. Shi Yang's model soon had bones, flesh, and veins. Within 2 minutes, another version of him was condensed right in front of Audrey. It was another Shi Yang who stood naked and showcased his lean and vigorous body. Although his eyes were sparkling, there was no surging life aura in his body or soul fluctuation that could frighten people. Rumor said that when the immortal demon warriors had reached a specific, profound level, even if their bodies were smashed, as long as they still had a drop of blood left, they could still resurrect themselves. Audrey deemed that it was untrue and that people were just exaggerating. But now, she saw it with her own eyes. The strange light rippled through her beautiful eyes as she admired Shi Yang's magical ability. Does it mean that you have an immortal body? Even if you were smashed, You could use the blood to revive. She thought that it was really miraculous. Shi Yang didn't answer. He looked pensive when he studied his other body, which was made of a drop of his blood. According to Blood Devil and Xian He, Profound Realm immortal demon experts could use the life power Upanishad to transform the blood into their own bodies. There were many rumors about the immortal demon clan, and how they used the blood to resurrect was always the favorite topic. In fact, people thought that the rumors were just exaggerated. Even for the experts of the immortal demon clan at a high level like Xian He, the body created from a drop of his blood couldn't have even one bit of the real body's strength. Anyway, the rumor said that using blood to resurrect was somehow correct. If Xian He's body was broken, as long as he still had the immortal demon blood, he could use it to grow his body and send his soul altar inside to make his body as strong as a dragon. The blood of the immortal demon clansmen was the core of life. If their blood wasn't destroyed, they could still regrow their body. Of course, after they had lost their real body, the body that they created quickly couldn't be as strong as they used to be. They needed a lot of time to gather the energy to refine the body. That was how they used the seal inside their blood to resume their original power. This procedure could take up to hundreds or even several thousand years. It wasn't as easy as people had rumored. At this moment, Shi Yang gathered his spirit to look at the clone he had just made with one drop of blood, his expression complicated. He hadn't sent any wisp of soul consciousness in it. It was merely a flesh puppet, and its body's strength was as tough as a warrior at True God Realm. If his true body was destroyed, he could place his soul altar into the clone and it would take dozens of years to recover. It wasn't what made him silent. While he was using a drop of blood to create the clone, he had a strange feeling as if he was creating a new creature. If he wanted to do that, he could cut off the connection with a wisp of soul consciousness and put it into a clone. Also, that clone would become a new creature. Could it be a whole new individual? Would it be an independent creature? Shi Yang knew that at his realm, he couldn't do that. However, he came to think of a possibility. Desolate had used the same method to make its clone create the 4 great creatures. The clones had created the 4 great creatures, and Desolate had used the blood of the precursors from the 4 races to create Bloodthirsty. It was creating creatures. How could Desolate do that? It was easy to create the flesh container, but how did Desolate create the soul? Shi Yang frowned and sank into his exploration of life power Upanishad. He was trying to reason the details when Desolate created the creatures. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get through the challenge of creating the soul of a new creature. He understood that he was still pretty far away from that miraculous level. However, he understood deeply that one day, he could break that mystery and he could actually create creatures and even new races. Thus, his galaxy-like incipient extent was going to be more lively. It would become like Desolate's world with so many races and special, marvelous creatures. Creating the galaxy and species, how great would that career be? How miraculous would that be? Shi Yang became passionate. He felt his soul rising as he had a motivation to head towards the future. This kind of changes in his soul and attitude had opened his mind and gave him fearless thoughts. I made the body. You should give a wisp of a departed soul. We will make him go to the cave, he beamed at Audrey. He knew Audrey cultivated a unique soul technique from the soul power Upanishad of Imperial Dark Tribe. She could tie the departed souls in her soul altar to refine her soul altar and make them the strange soul consciousness dwelling in her sea of consciousness. She had some marvelous power, indeed. There was a special area in Audrey's soul altar she used as a prison to the departed souls or the demons, making them her soul consciousness tentacles. The more departed souls, demons or creatures with the soul form, the better her power Upanishad and her realm became. It was also a special feature of Imperial Dark Tribe's power Upanishad. Indeed, Audrey didn't think much. She pointed her finger and a feeble soul flew out, falling into the head of Shi Yang's clone made of his blood. Shortly after, Shi Yang and Audrey felt a slight shock. They faced each other and divine light shot out of their eyes. A marvelous feeling quietly reflected in their hearts. The body made of Shi Yang's blood now had a soul Audrey that had tamed. She added a wisp of her soul power. That man with Shi Yang's blood and Audrey's soul was like an invisible rope that connected the two of them. Through him, Shi Yang could vaguely see the changes of Audrey's mind. Audrey could recognize the subtle changes at the bottom of his heart. It was an unimaginable connection that they couldn't describe with words. His like our son, Shi Yang was bewildered for a while before teasing Audrey. Audrey blushed and her cheeks reddened. However, her beautiful eyes were brilliant with light. She glared at Shi Yang and said awkwardly, "Don't say such rubbish." At this moment, her eyes were like clouds at a sunset. She looked so gorgeous, like a blooming flower. She made people's hearts beat frantically. Shi Yang became baffled. He looked at her for a while and then appraised, "You're really beautiful. It's just that you wear that cold face every day. You don't want people to come near you. You've been hiding your most beautiful features. It's not good, you know. Can you just put your effort into the business?" Audrey continuously took many deep breaths. Her ample breasts thrust in and out. Her moods changed as she was trying to suppress the desire to hit Shi Yang hard. Shi Yang smiled relaxedly and said, "You're the one who should take action. You've tamed that soul and it got your soul seal. You can control it, right?" Audrey harumphed and pulled the hair on her temple. "I'm so pissed off." Then, she used her power Upanishad and pointed at the cave. The puppet made of Shi Yang's blood drilled deep into the cave. It didn't stop after 15 minutes and moved further. "It seems pretty deep," frowned Shi Yang. Audrey didn't mind him. The charming gleam on her face disappeared. She looked cold and grave. The soul energy fluctuated strangely on her as she was focusing on sensing the changes in the hole. She could sense the tiny commotions inside the cave through that departed soul to see if there was any danger deep down there. Suddenly, Audrey looked shaken. Her soul altar shivered as she paled. Her beautiful eyes emitted marvelous light. She gritted her teeth and hissed, "You're right. Something really strange is in that cave. I couldn't connect to my departed soul and my soul consciousness in it. What happened?" Shi Yang's eyes brightened. "It seems to be cut off forcefully. Perhaps it was refined or destroyed. I can't tell what happened." "Do you feel anything from the body you'd used your blood to create?" she asked. "It turns into ashes." Shi Yang darkened his face. "I can't sense anything. It doesn't exist anymore. I can't feel it, which means it has gone completely." "You're right. Something strange is over there. This place isn't safe at all," Audrey was convinced. "Then, we should use another advanced method to see what strange thing is inside this meteorite." Shi Yang snorted and then continued, "Dared to swallow a drop of my blood, it should pay with the equal price. Whatever it is, it should pay." Then, sharp blades like shining wind blades shot out from his eyes. A magical energy fluctuation that could distort the void expanded from him. The surrounding space sizzled. The noises became louder gradually. In the beginning, Audrey didn't understand. Then, she looked around before covering her mouth and screamed in panic. She saw that the massive sharp space blades floating near them were attracted by Shi Yang's energy. They came with the momentum of something space-breaking. Chapter 1357, A Three-Legged Jade Cauldron. Chapter 1357, A Three-Legged Jade Cauldron. A sharp blade saber like a 1,000-meter-long lightning bolt appeared with the momentum that could mince the entire planet. Audrey had thought that countless pieces of broken stars and flows of meteorites in the sea domain of nihility were caused by those dragon-like space scythes. At this moment, those terrifying space sabers were drawn by Shi Yang's power Upanishad. They came with the most intimidating aura. Along their way, they had scythed dozens of giant rocks. The rocks exploded and sent pieces of rock chips everywhere. Seeing a massive blade coming, Audrey was numb. She hurried to use the power Upanishad and create layers of barriers to protect her body. She was ready to counter. Crack, crack. The giant blade slashed the surface of the asteroid they were riding. The hard surface sparked and sent so many rocks into the air. A tremendous shock came. Audrey's soft body shook violently like a small boat under a harsh thunderstorm. She felt so horrible and swayed as if she was about to collapse. Strangely, the massive asteroid spun after the impact as the space blade couldn't cut it through. However, many rocks on the surface shattered. "Oh, it's really strange, though," Shi Yang cried as he was surprised. Then, he continued to drive more space sabers. 5 more large blades came and clashed on the asteroid. It looked like someone trying to ignite the rock. The sparks appeared clearly while the dish-shaped asteroid was spinning around. Crack, crack, crack. So many ash-brown rocks of various sizes fell off the asteroid. They were destroyed shortly after. The asteroid trembled, but it was so powerful. It collided with the other rocks around, smashing them or sending chips of rocks everywhere. The asteroid itself was safe. It was intact and it was unbelievably rigid. The sharp space sabers were the sharpest attack in the world. It could halve the planet or destroy the lifestar quickly. Even the body of the immortal realm experts couldn't endure one slash. It was tough to resist such an attack. Anyway, this massive asteroid had just spun or trembled under several attacks. It wasn't destroyed yet. As the asteroid spun, Audrey became dizzy and turned pale. When the rocks collided and the tremors arose, the sparks and the rock chips damaged her too. The light cage protection she had made with her first sky of incipient God Realm cultivation base flashed constantly. It looked like her protection was about to vanish. At this moment, Shi Yang stopped guiding the space sabers. He rose one arm and directly pulled Audrey into his embrace, holding her cold body in his chest. The warm, masculine smell flooded Audrey's heart. She was dizzy and her eyes were puzzled. Just like a drowning victim who instinctively grabbed anything she could, she clutched and squeezed Shi Yang's arm. While she hadn't recognized, her body leaned against his, her generous breasts were placed on his broad chest. The asteroid was still spinning. The two rolled and felt like the sky turned upside down. The energy attacked the surface and made the rocks roll and fall off the asteroid. Shi Yang held Audrey with one arm and her wonderful body fell while his other hand gathered and released a river of starlight, using a special method to balance and adjust the trajectory of the asteroid. This kept it from colliding or moving into the area with constant explosions. In front of them, dozens of meteorites were colliding and created earth-shaking explosions that sent formidable shockwaves. Together they created an area that could destroy everything. He knew if their asteroid fell into that area, he and the princess of Imperial Dark Tribe in his chest would perish quickly. No one could save them. After a long time, the asteroid subsided. The lunar rock they had gotten rid of had fallen off while they didn't recognize it was happening. The asteroid beneath them became normal. However, it was still pulled by some mysterious force, moving quickly towards a dark area. Oops. He pulled himself together to observe the ground. He couldn't help but cry in surprise. His face became odd. Audrey got herself together. She was about to scold him for his rash actions, but his cry had affected her. She also looked at the ground. Immediately, her bright eyes lighting up. What is this thing? She seemed to lose her usual calmness. Her soft body shook. The asteroid under their feet was now like a beautiful jade, something that had just shaken off the bark. It was now emerald green. The thing that had just been revealed was like some sort of precious jade they couldn't name. It glowed in a deep green halo. The green grass on the surface of the asteroid was now some kind of archaic tadpole language. The drawings looked like tadpoles swimming around underneath them. The symbols glowed in a glossy emerald green light and moved around as if they were unceasingly creating something magical. It seems like we need to peel off more rock. The rock surface is just a cover, I guess. Shi Yang's eyes brightened as he grinned. He moved the strange asteroid around and used the bloody sword to smash the rock sticking on the jade's surface with the bloodlight. The sea domain of nihility had many mysterious things. As Xian He, Ming Hao, and the 4 heavenly kings had chosen this area to cultivate, it meant some marvels here had attracted them. Spark had collected just a piece of a broken divine weapon in the outskirt. After he had refined that celestial ice jade flake, his competence increased massively. It indirectly provided evidence that showed how wonderful this place could be. It used to be a strange rock before the space sabers had peeled off the rock surface. Unexpectedly, the thing underneath the rock layer was so magnificent. Shi Yang felt his heart beat faster. He could confirm that this massive jade was the reason why the sharp space saber couldn't cut through the asteroid. As it survived the sharp space sabers and it had unknown tadpole symbols, this thing was likely a formidable secret treasure. Audrey didn't move rashly. She just looked at the thing under her feet and went absent-minded. She looked passionate when she mumbled, "This rock is so beautiful." Shortly after, all the rocks sticking on the surface of the asteroid peeled off. The thing under the rock layer was revealed and it glowed in a mesmerizing green light. Unexpectedly, it was a giant three-legged jade cauldron. This massive jade cauldron was at least several times bigger than the Immortal Island. It was beautifully green and the surface of the cauldron was filled with tadpole symbols. It seemed like those symbols were lush tufts of grass they had seen. The cauldron's mouth was deep and eccentric with a cold and dark aura. It was like the mouth of an icy beast that was ready to swallow people. The three-legged jade cauldron was placed inclined. Shi Yang and Audrey were standing on the body of the cauldron. They observed and complimented it. "The cave we saw must lead to the mouth of the cauldron. My departed soul and the wisp of my soul consciousness seemed to be refined. I can feel that they are now just a normal tadpole symbol on the surface of this jade cauldron." Audrey rubbed her smooth forehead and looked astounded. Shi Yang knew why she looked like that. This three-legged jade cauldron was so massive while each of the symbols on its surface was just as big as a fingernail. If Audrey wasn't wrong that one of her departed soul and a wisp of her soul consciousness had been absorbed by the three-legged jade cauldron and they had turned into just a small symbol on the cauldron, had the billions of tadpole symbols on this cauldron been created the same way? How many creatures' lives had it taken? Shi Yang could feel his hair rising on his nape. With a stern face, he looked at the dark mouth of the green cauldron, crying in a low-pitched voice, "Don't get close to the cauldron's mouth." Audrey was chilled while she was walking toward the cauldron's mouth. She reacted timely, halting by the place and asking, "If it can draw the creatures into it, it should have a tool spirit. Should we find a way to communicate with it? If we can't find any other living being here, we can try this." Communicate with it. Shi Yang wore a sour face. Even if it has a tool spirit, this thing can refine the soul. When you release a wisp of your soul consciousness, it will happen as you've said. It will become a tadpole symbol. Perhaps you could try to check it out. Fine, Audrey didn't believe him. She had many detached souls in her brain. As her mind flickered, she released a feeble soul. Without attaching her soul consciousness to it, she used her power to make the soul a wisp of soul fluctuation to ask for information. Then, she sent the soul to the cauldron's mouth directly. Then, nothing happened. No commotion arose from the three-legged cauldron. The detached soul she had released disappeared like a rock sinking into a seabed. Nothing echoed. "It seems like this tool spirit isn't friendly at all," snorted Audrey. Shortly after, the tadpole symbols on the surface of the jade cauldron became like a twisted green lightning. They created a strange but marvelous entry fluctuation. Many fragments of the asteroids around seemed attracted to some magnetic field. They swarmed over and magically stuck on the surface of the jade cauldron. After 1 hour, the three-legged jade cauldron was covered with rocks again. It had resumed its original appearance before the sharp space sabers had peeled it off. However, it didn't have green grass or a cave this time. Shi Yang and Audrey watched the whole thing. They felt so begrudging as they didn't know where and how to destroy this jade cauldron or what they should do to connect to the tool spirit. If there was a tool spirit, how is your fusion with the heaven flames? How many heaven flames does your God-blessed mainland's origin have? How many flames that still need to fuse with each other? Shi Yang rubbed his chin and asked something. It seemed not that relevant. Our ancestral star has 7 heaven flames. 3 of them have fused together and the other 4 have also fused. I'm in the final stage of heaven flame fusion. However, it's really hard to fuse them all completely. I haven't found a way to make progress. I think I'm going to give it up, said Audrey. Should we use the flaming origin to check if we can make this three-legged jade cauldron change? Shi Yang suggested. Would it work? Audrey was surprised. I don't know. But just like what you've said, we should try, Shi Yang shrugged begrudgingly. If it works, we can know the magical features of the jade cauldron. We can discover it. Okay, let's try, Audrey nodded in agreement. Chapter 1358, The Absolute Beginning Symbols. Chapter 1358, The Absolute Beginning Symbols. Inside the rapid asteroid current, the asteroids moved like lightning strikes. They often collided, resulting in a lot of beautiful sparks and fire. Several thousand asteroids flowed like a river heading to the vast sea. They moved very fast towards a specific direction. This area didn't have a sun, moon, or the concept of time. It had only loneliness, a low temperature, desolation, and danger. Shi Yang used space blades to destroy the rock layer underneath. He cleaned the rock sticking on the jade cauldron one more time. The deep green jade cauldron was exposed. The fingernail-sized tadpole symbols were swimming around the surface and the body of the cauldron as if they were real living things. The mouth of the cauldron was emitting a dim light, hiding mysterious, terrifying secrets. Shi Yang and Audrey parted. They stood opposite to each other on the three-legged jade cauldron. Flames burned fiercely on their bodies. Countless clusters of flame expanded and streamed. The flames on their bodies had different colors, including orange-red, dark red, icy blue, and bright yellow. Their auras were also different. The flames were fiery, dark, and sinister. Some flames sparked with lightning and some flames carried a fierce wind. The heaven flames had different attributes. Particularly, Shi Yang's heaven flames had the soul, lighting, electric, icy, top yang powers, and even the corpse chi auras. Audrey's flames were the same. After fusing, her 7 heaven flames became only 2. Her 2 origins flames had a similar aura as Shi Yang's. They could switch the auras easily. Currently, their heaven flames with different auras and colors had all turned to the top heating, yang ones. The heaven flames were like a carpet that slowly covered the surface of the three-legged jade cauldron. They were trying to use the scorching, top yang heaven flames to refine this massive cauldron. Shi Yang suddenly got a magical feeling. The clusters of Shi Yang's heaven flame burned the jade cauldron. They directly contacted the aura of the tadpole symbols on the jade cauldron's surface. His co-soul turned into a dim flame and slowly danced. A seal in his soul was triggered and it gave him a familiar feeling. It was like when he met Hui and could use the co-soul to understand Hui's mysterious language. This time, his co-soul got a familiar feeling through the burning heaven flame. It seemed like he could recognize the consciousness of those archaic symbols. However, as he quieted down his mind to study carefully, he found that he still needed something to read them. Those tadpole symbols were swirling in his head. They were really familiar, but he couldn't read or understand them. Audrey had the same feeling and it was even deeper than his. The wisps of her soul consciousness that fused with the Origin's heaven flames seeped into the tadpole symbols and tried to decode them. Audrey had fused with the heaven flames more deeply. Her compatibility level was almost as profound as Haig's, which was 1 level higher than Shi Yang's. She was sensitive enough to know that those tadpole symbols were the written language of the most mysterious, archaic time. They were just like the Origin she had fused. She suddenly remembered what Tian Xie had said. The 4 ancient continents used to be Desolate's limbs. They had Desolate's life consciousness and its dependent soul. Also, Desolate was truly a creature from the absolute beginning. Her beautiful eyes brightened as she screamed, "Those tadpole symbols should be the language of the absolute beginning era. I feel that they're so familiar. I believe that when I completely fuse with the heaven flames and become one with God-blessed mainland, I will be able to read and understand those characters. I can decode the three-legged cauldron." "I think so," Shi Yang nodded and agreed with her presumption. He regarded her and then continued to burn the massive cauldron. He found that when the heaven flames covered the three-legged jade cauldron, those tadpole characters acted as if they were creatures with lives. They swam around the surface of the jade cauldron, which made them look exactly like little tadpoles. As they were moving around, they created so many different, mysterious, and complicated drawings on the surface of the cauldron. Each of those drawings hid the marvelous mysteries. For example, at this moment, they were creating a scene of lightning strikes and thunder rumbling that was destroying the whole world. The lightning bolts crushed so many asteroids around and gave people a strong impression. After a while, the characters changed again and created a harsh, icy world that was absolutely cold, lonely, and barren. Whenever the tadpole symbols created a new drawing, the cauldron released a corresponding aura. The cauldron had bolts of lightning shooting and then it became very cold. The energy that the three-legged jade cauldron released was according to the drawings that the tadpole symbols had created. It was really magical, indeed. However, when he and Audrey paused and subsided their heaven flames, the tadpole characters also subsided and then stopped moving. The drawings on the giant cauldron disappeared gradually. Shi Yang understood everything quickly. He pondered for a while before retrieving all of his heaven flames. The heaven flames can't refine this thing. It isn't afraid of the sharp space sabers, so I think it won't be afraid of the heat of the heaven flames. You're correct. Those symbols should be the language of the absolute beginning era. Also, I think this giant three-legged jade cauldron should be the weapon of the creatures in that era. Perhaps it has been here for billions of years. It's normal that we can't destroy it. He reluctantly gave it up. Seeing him let go of the heaven flames, Audrey hesitated for a while and then did the same. She thought for a while and then said, I sensed the soul aura from those tadpole characters. They are the refined souls. I can feel that they are parts of some massive formations. If we can understand those characters, we can know the functions of this cauldron. Also, maybe we can tame and use it. Then, we have to wait until we can fuse with the heaven flames completely. Shi Yang smiled bitterly. Audrey said nothing. Completely fusing with the Origin's heaven flames was a long process. Sometimes, individual efforts weren't enough. They needed something special or some good encounters. Every time Shi Yang had fused his heaven flames, it wasn't because of his experience or accumulation. It was his special encounters when his mind suddenly opened to understand the marvel. It was unknown until they fused all the heaven flames. As they couldn't understand the characters on the cauldron, they were just wasting their efforts by burning it. This magical item from the absolute beginning era wasn't something they could decode, and taming it was just a dream. Forget it. I think this flow of asteroids should have a destination. Let's see where it is. As Shi Yang was begrudging, he felt content with this idea. Not long after Shi Yang and Audrey had retrieved their heaven flames, many meteoroids and asteroids around were attracted to the cauldron, sticking on its surface. Without grass growing, the massive cauldron became a simple asteroid. Compared to the other asteroids around, it wasn't eye-catching. The two of them were dejected. They then closed their eyes to cultivate on the three-legged jade cauldron. They were trying to fuse their heaven flames with the hope that they would be able to read the language of the absolute beginning era. Then, they could have a chance to seize this cauldron. Unfortunately, the fusion of the heaven flames wasn't easy. Time flew hurriedly. After an unknown course, Shi Yang opened his eyes. This time, his eyes emitted a dazzling light. He jolted up and hissed, I felt the aura of something alive. The life magnetic field is really fierce. We're approaching it. Audrey woke up, her beautiful eyes twinkling. Ahead of us. Shi Yang nodded. Then, he realized that the asteroid with the cauldron inside was flying much more quickly than the other rocks around. Thus, while they were cultivating, this asteroid had caught up with something ahead of them. The vigorous life magnetic field he had sensed had come from an asteroid ahead of them. If they got rid of the lunar rock, they would have never met that one. However, their current asteroid was really fast. After flying for a long time, they were about to reach the others. Which realm does it have? Layers of light emerged on Audrey's body. She had discreetly urged her power. Now, she was ready to deal with any danger. Along the way, she had sat by Shi Yang and they hadn't encountered many dangers. It was because of the three-legged cauldron they were riding. Inside this current of asteroids, terrifying dangers appeared everywhere. The rocks bumped into each other and exploded. The lightning and thunder struck everywhere. The sharp space sabers had never ceased their attacks. So many asteroids had been smashed into dust and scattered. However, the asteroid they were riding seemed to have the spirit that could proactively dodge those dangers. It had successfully avoided the extremely intimidating things that could make Audrey perish instantly. She understood that this three-legged jade cauldron had something magical. Even if it didn't have a tool spirit, it was a wonderful formation that could help it avoid the dangers in this area. Otherwise, she and Shi Yang wouldn't be able to stay here at ease. I'm not sure, but the life magnetic field is brimming. I think it won't be weaker than you and me. Shi Yang's face was grave as he hissed. Be careful. They found us. They've released their soul consciousness to check us out. A soul power field like a tornado appeared above their heads. That soul power field was extremely fierce and had seeped into every corner of this asteroid. This asteroid had a dark cave that led to the depth of the asteroid, which headed directly to the mouth of the cauldron. Shi Yang and Audrey knew this, but the one who had sent the soul consciousness to sense it didn't. The furious, tornado-like soul consciousness of that creature seeped into the entrance of the cave. Then, it disappeared like a rock thrown into the ocean. However, there was no echo. Then, many soul energy tornadoes that had streamed into the cave disappeared completely. Shi Yang and Audrey were sensitive enough to know that the three-legged cauldron inside the asteroid had just refined a powerful soul consciousness. They could feel the tadpole symbols begin to move again. I think that one got a big loss this time, Shi Yang grinned. Audrey also laughed. Well, I wonder how much soul power that one lost. He had bad luck. If his soul got damaged because of this, I'm afraid that he will consider us as the ringleaders. Be cautious. Shi Yang's face became stern. Chapter 1359 Heavenly Eye Clan. Chapter 1359 Heavenly Eye Clan. In the shoreless, endless current of asteroids, three aliens that looked pretty similar to the human clan were riding a flaming asteroid. They were all lanky with curly brown hair. They didn't look very different from human beings aside from a vertical slit that was between their eyebrows. It looked like a vertical, closed eye. They had an extra eye compared to humans, and that closed eye gave people an odd feeling. The three of them included an old man with a dejected appearance. His eyes were wrinkled like chicken skin. He wore an ash-gray robe. Accompanying the old man was a middle-aged man with twinkling eyes. He held a dry wooden staff and his face was gingerly. The last member of this group was a woman who looked to be in her 30s. She was wearing brocade clothes. Her face was picturesque and her body was graceful. This group of three came from the same clan that had an extra eye. At this moment, the old man's vertical eye was twitching. The green veins on his forehead bulged and made his face sinister and fierce. The middle-aged man and the woman were cautiously looking at the old man. Shortly after, the old man shook hard. His vertical eye was still closed. 2 trickles of blood oozed out of the corners of his mouth. His blood was brown-gray. It wasn't red. Senior. The middle-aged man and the woman screamed in their alien language. They all grimaced. As they were screaming, they were about to use their power to help the old man recover. The eye on the old man's forehead shrank into a slit. His pair of eyes under that vertical eyes opened. With a pale face, he waved his hands to prevent the others from helping him. Don't waste your energy. My soul got hurt, not my body or God power. He stood up and turned around to see the area behind him. The middle-aged man and the woman followed him and waited for his explanation. The 2 aliens behind us don't have high realms. They're at just incipient God realm. However, the asteroid they're riding is really strange and unpredictable. Half of the soul energy tornado I'd released was swallowed. I couldn't feel the power of the asteroid yet. Perhaps, their master is staying inside the asteroid. We should be careful. While he was cultivating, his third eye sent him some anxious feelings. He gathered his consciousness to sense and found Shi Yang's and Audrey's life magnetic fields. Thus, he didn't hesitate to explore. He didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to retrieve half of the power he had released. Shortly after, his soul was damaged. He was startled, indeed. Senior, what should we do? Their asteroid is flying fast. Soon, they will catch up with us. Should we find a place to avoid them? The woman's eyebrows twitched. She hurried to suggest. She was a gingerly person. When they encountered unknown dangers, she proactively tried to dodge them. The sea domain of nihility was so immense. If they didn't try to find it, it was going to be tough to meet up with the other creatures. Nevertheless, the creatures that could operate in the sea domain of nihility were very bold. In this group of 3, the woman had the lowest realm at third sky of incipient god realm. This time, she didn't dare to act rashly as she was accompanying her 2 brothers. If we leave the flaming crystal cloud boat, it will be very dangerous. We'll have to face exploding asteroids, sharp space scythes, and bombarding lightning bolts. In your realm, you won't be able to resist for a long time. We can't take the risk. The old man shook his head. The flaming asteroid underneath them was also strange. The burning asteroid emitted fire clouds, circling the rock and sending sparks everywhere. Countless lethal space sabers, strong gusts of wind, and even the icicles couldn't attack them. They could only glide through them. They were safe along the way. They didn't need to worry about the deadly dangers in the sea domain of nihility. Thus, they had time to cultivate and sense Shiyang's and Audrey's life energy commotions. What should we do now? The woman sounded reluctant. The asteroid they are riding is strange. But it's just my guess. Maybe they don't have any master accompanying them. If so, we don't need to worry at all. The old man pondered and then decided, wait until they come close. We can ask them to know who they are. Yeah, under the given circumstances that we don't know things clearly, we shouldn't provoke them. But if there are only the 2 of them, harumph. His eyes suddenly became dark and sinister. A murderous aura emitted from him that was as thick as if it was a real matter and could destroy people's mind. His realm and cultivation base weren't low. However, when the massive 3-legged cauldron had collected his soul power, it also hurt his soul. He was going to need a lot of time to recover. Deep in his heart, he hated Shiyang and Audrey already. If he didn't need to concern himself with the mysterious cauldron, he would have stormed over and crushed Shiyang and Audrey to vent out his anger. We'll follow you, Senior, nodded the middle-aged man. The cold light radiated from his eyes as he looked pensive. On the surface of the asteroid with the big cauldron inside, Shiyang squinted and looked at the torrential asteroid current. We will encounter them soon. There are 3 of them. Their soul magnetic fields are full and surging. I'm afraid that their realms aren't low, but I can't clearly tell their realms. When we see them, we will know. They're the first creatures we ever met in this area. Audrey arched her brows, feeling excited and looking hopeful. But the one who got his soul hurt won't be friendly to us. Are you sure we can deal with them? If we're cautious, we'll be all right, said Shiyang. I hope we can get some useful information from them. I wonder how long we've been trapped here. Perhaps our world out there has changed earth-shakingly. You can ask, has Hui destroyed our world yet? How about Desolate? Has it awakened yet? Audrey mumbled. She had no measure to tell time, but she guessed that they had been trapped here for around 10 years. During this time, she couldn't contact Imperial Dark Tribe and she couldn't use the power of the Origin to see the commotions on God-blessed mainland. She was really worried about the members of Imperial Dark Tribe, her planet, and her mother's safety. My co-soul is all right. It means that my Grace mainland is all right too. As your soul doesn't have any change, your ancestral planet is safe too. Don't worry too much, comforted Shiyang. Most of his friends and family members had been delivered to Grace mainland. As long as Grace mainland was okay, he didn't need to worry a lot. The fierce war between the God Clan and the bloodthirsty force had swept through many star areas. However, he didn't really care about them. When he delivered Xia Xinyang back to Grace mainland, he had discreetly advised her to call all the ones who had a good relationship with him to return to Grace mainland. After he had fused with the Genesis fruit, Grace mainland changed marvelously. It had a layer of immense energy hover above the surface of the planet. It protected Grace mainland every minute. He believed that unless Hui used its real power, but its clones couldn't destroy Grace mainland. No matter how strangely the world changed, as long as Grace mainland and his friends were safe, his beloved ones were safe and sound, he could ease his mind. Audrey calmed down as he had comforted her. She sighed, I hope so. The asteroid underneath them continued to accelerate. Suddenly, a A dazzling flaming rock appeared in their vision. That flaming asteroid was so brilliant that it was eye-catching among countless ash-gray, brown, or black asteroids. So many flaming clouds covered the beautiful, slender, boat-like asteroid. The three aliens were standing on the back of the rock and looking at Shi Yang and Audrey with bright eyes. "Oh hey, they have another eye between their eyebrows," screamed Audrey in fear. Shi Yang was surprised. Looking at the three aliens, he lowered his voice. "The old man and that middle-aged man are at first sky of immortal realm. That woman is at third sky of incipient god realm. That old man is really formidable. He's about to enter second sky of immortal realm. He's just one step away." Shi Yang had contacted Caesar, Ling Xiong, Lorraine, Xian He, Frederick, De Carlos, and he had also witnessed how intimidating the God Lord and Ming Hao were. With his sharp senses, he could know the realms of the others exactly through the level of the blood qi, the tenacious body, and the life magnetic field. He could see even the smallest change of the soul clearly. As Audrey listened to Shi Yang, she felt cold, so she proactively stayed close to him. Audrey had only first sky of incipient god realm. At this moment, her realm made her the bottom of the food chain in the sea domain of nihility. She was vulnerable here. The vertical slits in the labella of the three aliens riding on the flaming crystal cloud boat twitched. They gazed at Shi Yang. Their ears quivered as if they were trying to identify his language and identity. After a while, the old man suddenly smiled warmly at him. He pitched his voice and used Shi Yang and Audrey's language. "We're the members of the Heavenly Eye clan. We're glad that we can meet up here. I would like to ask if your precursors or your seniors are here with you. Do we have the honor to meet them?" Audrey was bewildered. "You know our language?" The old man chuckled and explained in a friendly manner, "Well, of course. As we travel through the sea domain of nihility, we have to prepare well. We use a kind of soul memory seal to learn a couple hundred languages in many different star areas. Your language is rare but not really difficult. Don't be amazed. If you want, you just need to imprint the soul memory seal in your head and you can speak many languages of different star areas." His friendly attitude made him a modest precursor guiding the juniors step by step. He didn't look dark and sinister as he used to. Shi Yang wore a cold and faint face, but he was actually very cautious. He thought that this old man was very hypocritical. He knew that this old man was an evil character that he needed to carefully deal with. If this man came with rage, Shi Yang could accept it. This fogey had been hurt by the massive three-legged cauldron anyway. However, at this moment, he looked so friendly as if nothing had happened. He made Shi Yang uneasy immediately. Shi Yang knew that he was a sort of tough and malicious person. He observed carefully and found that the other three were gazing at the asteroid that he and Audrey were riding. He understood it immediately. He knew why the old man had to act gingerly. The others weren't so sure about their competences. Chapter 1360 Three Kinds of Living Beings. Chapter 1360 Three Kinds of Living Beings. Updated by Novelful. Commander. The three members of the Heavenly Eye clan were looking at the asteroid Shi Yang and Audrey were riding with bright eyes. Also, the old man, their leader, had asked to greet their precursors inside the asteroid. Shi Yang sneered inwardly. He understood that the others were nice and friendly to them but not because they were polite and well-educated. It was because they couldn't guess how strong Shi Yang and Audrey were. Throwing a glance to the asteroid underneath, Shi Yang wore a respectful face, bowed slightly, and then lifted his head. He spoke arrogantly, "I'm sorry. Our master is cultivating inside. He can't come out to greet you. Please understand." "Ah, no worries, no worries." The old man's eyes sparkled as he studied Shi Yang. Seeing Shi Yang act arrogantly, he thought that Shi Yang wasn't scared because he had a strong master. The old man was startled, so he became even more cautious. His smile became more tender as he said modestly, "Allow me to introduce myself, I'm Ivelines. They are my brother and sister, Adams and Moshe. We're going to the territory of the Dragon Lizard clan. I wonder if we're heading to the same place." While he was introducing, the middle-aged man named Adams and his sister Moshe smiled and nodded to greet Shi Yang and Audrey. They were sneaking looks at the asteroid underneath Shiyang and Audrey as they were filled with fear. Remembering what Ivelines had told them, they didn't dare to provoke Shiyang and Audrey since they were really afraid of the rage of Shiyang and Audrey's master who was cultivating inside the asteroid. The rapid steroid current rumbled all the time. While they were talking, Shiyang and Audrey's asteroid was moving faster, so they were approaching Iveline's flaming crystal cloud boat. With this torrent, Shiyang and Audrey were going to pass the boat and leave Iveline's and his group behind. While Shiyang was talking, Audrey kept a cold face. She just listened and didn't utter a word. She was clever enough to see what the three experts of the Heavenly Eye clan worried about. Thus, she acted even more arrogant and proud. It looked like she didn't even put them in her eye. The more arrogant and cold Audrey got, the more cautious Iveline's became. He thought that the girl and Shiyang had a strong foundation to depend. Thus, he pondered if they should proactively make way for them. Iveline's didn't even dare to tell the others that his soul got hurt because he was afraid of the disaster he could face later. Dragon Lizard Clan? As Iveline's was about to retreat and get further away from these two, Shiyang suddenly smiled. To be honest, our precursors are cultivating inside and he has ordered us to drive. But we... Shiyang looked embarrassed and said, "This is the first time we've ever come here. We made a wrong turn, so we're lost now. Our precursors didn't know this yet. We're really upset. We don't know where we are now. Is the Dragon Lizard Clan you've mentioned near here?" Audrey appraised Shiyang for his witty reaction. She cooperated by pulling a sad face. The cold visage disappeared. She sighed as if she was afraid that her precursors would punish them. The three members of the Heavenly Eye clan exchanged looks and smiled. Moshe, the only woman in that group of three, beamed at the others. "Yes. This area is the Dragon Lizard clan's territory. Precursor Dragon Lizard, the second generation of the Dragon Lizard clan, is having a meal. The asteroid current over there is his food. While he's eating, he will take in the surrounding asteroids to increase his power. After that, Dragon Lizard will stay awake for a course of time. The members of the third generation of the Dragon Lizard clan will have a festival to celebrate the Dragon Lizard waking up. They will sell a lot of precious treasures. We're going there to see if we can find the cultivating materials we need." Listening to Moshe, Shiyang and Audrey were touched. They could never imagine that the second generation of the Dragon Lizard clan would consider the outer space rocks his food. "What is that man? Is he an absolute beginning creature? Is that Dragon Lizard a creature from the absolute beginning era?" asked Audrey, her voice strange. Iveline's looked at the strangely. He rubbed his chin then asked, "You guys are from Desolate Territory?" "Desolate Territory?" Audrey was surprised. She felt as she was lost in the mist. She couldn't grasp Iveline's idea. Iveline's was more surprise. "Your precursors didn't tell you anything about this place? You have no basic knowledge about the sea domain of nihility at all?" Audrey didn't change her countenance. She still wore the cold face as she snorted. "As soon as we got here, those fogies got inside the asteroid and cultivated. They said that when we got to the place, they would explain to us. They had only shown us the direction to go. Such a bunch of irresponsible old men." She stomped and cracked the rock surface. She looked so outraged. The three members of the Heavenly Eye clan changed their countenances. They were more fearful of the fogies Audrey had mentioned. It meant that there wasn't only one expert hiding inside the asteroid. Also, since Audrey didn't sound respectful when she talked about them, Audrey must be their favorite student. "Oh, I see." Iveline's was astounded. Seeing them approaching, he had an idea. He clasped his hand and said, "Oh, if you don't mind, I can explain something to you. It could save your precursors from this labor too." Audrey's heart beat frantically. Of course, she wanted it a lot. Still, while wearing a cold and faint visage, she nodded and said casually, "Then I have to thank you. Don't be too polite." Iveline smiled and then began explaining. "Normally, there are three kinds of creatures living around the sea domain of nihility. The first kind is the ones like the Dragon Lizard clan whose first-generation ancestor was the absolute beginning creature called Lizard. The real absolute beginning creatures have a single-worded name, which is the language of the absolute beginning era. Lizard's second generation has a two-word name, which is the dragon lizard. After the dragon lizard, it's the dragon lizard clan. They are the later generations of lizard, the absolute beginning creature. This is the first kind of creature in the world. The second kind is the one like us, the members of the Heavenly Eye clan. Our ancestors weren't the absolute beginning creatures. They were high-level living beings created after the absolute beginning era. Of course, it's possible that our blood has the vestiges of absolute beginning creatures, more or less. But it's not really important. We're the new living beings of the new era. About the third kind, Ivelines paused for a while and grinned oddly. It's you guys. You're the living beings that the absolute beginning creatures have created. They used the power of the absolute beginning creatures with the understanding of life to trigger the earth and heaven, and even destiny to create new lives. Because you were created by the absolute beginning creature, your soul is also born in the territory of that creature. You will be bound and limited to that creature. Unless you destroy your creator or tame it, your soul will always have an enslaving seal. Your creator can control you. So, among the three kinds of creatures, we are the ones that are discriminated as the weakest. Audrey said through her gritted teeth. No. Ivelines shook his head and continued explaining, your kind can still cultivate to an extremely profound level. You can evolve endlessly. There are some of you who can kill the creator or replace it. Of course, before you can do that, you are bound, but only your creator can bind you. No one else can have this ability, anyway. Pausing for a while, he added, actually, when the three kinds of creatures cultivate to a profound level, they aren't too different from each other in nature. There are so many peerless warriors among of your kind. They aren't weaker than the other creatures of the other two kinds. If you can kill your creator, you can replace it and become more intimidating. Listening to Ivelines, Yang and Audrey exchanged looks and appeared pensive. After they met the members of the Heavenly Eye clan, they knew more about the settings of this immense universe. Staying inside Desolate's territory, they were like the frogs under the coconut shell. They had lived in a dry well without knowing how high the sky really was. But now, they finally knew a bit more about its mysteries. How did you know we came from the desolate territory? Is there anything to differentiate or divide the areas? Asked Yang. Ivelines wasn't surprised because of their ignorance anymore. Your language exists in my memory soul seal. It's the language in the desolate territory, the territory of desolate, an absolute beginning creature. Previously, there were some creatures from your area who came to the sea domain. Thus, your language was recorded and spread out. Pausing for a while, he continued, there are so many territories similar to desolate territory outside the sea domain of nihility. Also, there are real independent territories that were created at the beginning of the universe. The sea domain of nihility has many entrances connected to outside territories. I've told you about the three kinds of creatures. Many of them live outside the sea domain of nihility, but some of them still live in this sea domain of nihility. For example, the dragon lizard clan lives right in the sea domain of nihility. So, the sea domain of nihility is the center of those territories. The territories out there are independent worlds surrounding the sea domain of nihility. Audrey was surprised. Ivelines nodded. Yep, exactly. Your desolate territory is the territory that Desolate the absolute beginning creature had created. It isn't different from the real territories. Even if Desolate vanishes, the territory will remain. Anyway, the territory of our Heavenly Eye clan wasn't created by an absolute beginning creature. It's the universe that has naturally developed for billions of years. Most of the territories out there formed naturally. The territories created by the absolute beginning creatures are very rare and they are much safer. In fact, you guys are very lucky that you can reach such a realm. You guys are living and growing in a greenhouse. I know that many people living in our territory would envy you guys. Envy us? Audrey looked awkward. Of course, they envy you, Moshe intervened, her eyes filled with sadness. Our family lives on a star in our territory. When I was born, there were hundreds of kids like me. But now, not even after 1,000 years, 2/3 of them are gone. Most of them were killed by natural dangers while cultivating outside. Like this sea domain with so many death traps. Shi Yang was fearful. No, not this much. If they lived here, they would have all been killed. We wouldn't even have had 1/3 left. Although our area isn't as dangerous as this area, it isn't safe at all. The deadly storms and tornadoes could destroy even the souls. If we want to cultivate, we must take risks. Death happens regularly, said Moshe. The areas outside this sea domain of nihility are mostly like our Heavenly Eye Clan's territory. Dangers lie everywhere. After experiencing so many challenges out there, when we reach a specific realm, we are qualified to enter and travel around this sea domain of nihility, said Adams, the one who had kept silent all the time. Shi Yang and Audrey silently listened to them. Until now, they had finally gotten clear information about the sea domain of nihility. They finally knew how mysterious and deadly dangerous it was. Also, there were so many similar territories outside the sea domain of nihility. This place was the center of so many territories, the most mysterious and attractive place to high realm warriors and high-level creatures. Chapter 1361, The First Battle in the Sea Domain. Chapter 1361, The First Battle in the Sea Domain. Updated by Novelful. Commander Ivelines was like the nice and friendly grandfather next door as he told them the mysteries of the sea domain of nihility. With the information he had provided, Shi Yang and Audrey finally had a clear understanding of the place. Now, they knew how vast the real Sea of Stars was. In fact, there were countless territories similar to their territory. Now, they knew that not only Desolate, Devour, and Hui were creatures from the absolute beginning era in this world. Also, the incipient god realm was actually vulnerable in the sea domain of nihility. Desolate territory is the world that Desolate had created. It's really magical. Have your precursors ever met Desolate and gotten its core inheritance? Ivelines suddenly asked while the vertical slit on his forehead twitched, and sent a miraculous wisp of soul, which then fell into Audrey's eye. Audrey suddenly became bewildered. Her eyes looked puzzled. Her consciousness was seized as she had only first sky of incipient god realm. Ivelines had ambushed her quickly. She said perplexedly, "No precursors are with us. We deceived you." Hearing her, Shi Yang's temples convulsed as he cried inwardly. His face became ultimately stern. He didn't think more and pulled Audrey to his side, sending a flow of cold energy through his hand into her body. Shuddering, Audrey woke up. Her beautiful face turned frosty, her eyes coldly piercing. Shi Yang cursed himself for being careless under his breath. He had underestimated the cunning feature of the others. Ivelines had shown his smiling face all the time and explained to them everything they had asked. His nice and friendly attitude had reduced Shi Yang's and Audrey's vigilance. Shi Yang thought that they were really afraid of his imaginary precursors, so they came to befriend them. He didn't expect that this old man would be so bold. He had spent a lot of efforts to tell Shi Yang and Audrey some information just to make them relax their guard. Then, he attacked Audrey, the one with the lower realm. Audrey was under his soul attack and telling him the truth. Such a treacherous old man. Audrey looked cold as the departed souls moved around her body. Eliminating the wisp of attacking soul consciousness in her brain, she hissed. Ivelines, Adams, and Moshe fell into silence after they had heard the truth from Audrey. Moshe just frowned, her face odd. She sighed as if she was sympathetic for what the other two were about to experience. Ivelines and Adams, her two seniors, were cold and sinister. The warm smile on their faces vanished. They immediately showed their real colors. Mwahaha. Ivelines laughed evilly. I didn't expect that you two would be such ignorant kids. The thing inside this asteroid should be the treasures of your school, right? It hurts my soul and it made me skeptical. I have to waste a lot of time to identify the truth. Do you know how much of my time you have wasted? While talking, Ivelines moved like a cold light and zoomed over from the flaming crystal cloud boat. In just a blink, he landed on Shi Yang and Audrey's asteroid. He turned around and said to Adams and Moshe, I can handle them easily since they are only two juniors at incipient god realm. They can't escape me. You guys don't need to waste your god power. Adams nodded and said darkly, "Then, we have to bother you, Senior." "Senior, shouldn't we not act so harshly like that?" frowned Moshe. "There's no rule worth mentioning in the sea domain of nihility. It's their bad fate that they've encountered us. Moreover, the asteroid they're riding should have something really good inside." Adams snorted and told her off. "It's the first time you came here. You don't know how malicious it is in this area. If we encountered second sky of immortal realm here, we wouldn't have a natural death. Don't be compassionate. Otherwise, you'll have to endure a big loss in the future." Moshe sighed weakly. She didn't say more because she knew it was no use. "Hey, you old man. You do have a dark and profound scheme. You've invested a lot of efforts to make us understand the marvels of the sea domain of nihility. I have just one more question. Did you guys tell us the truth about this area?" Yang frowned and looked at Ivlines slowly approaching. He discreetly urged his power. "Nothing we've told you guys is false. Of course, to make you show your weakness, I couldn't make any mistake. You guys don't have enough experience. Don't blame me for being sinister." At this moment, Ivlines wore a cold and harsh face. He didn't keep a bit of the friendly countenance. He directly walked toward Yang. "I will kill you first. Then, I will use your sister's soul to investigate the miraculous powers inside this asteroid. You want to kill us because your soul got hurt. Don't you think you're too savage?" Yang gave him a forced smile. "My soul has been damaged badly. It has affected my breakthrough. You guys must pay with your lives," hissed Ivlines. His curly brown hair emitted a grey halo. He threw both of his hands into the sky. The gold light suddenly burst out of his palms when he released the keen god power. Shortly after, countless fine gold fragments swarmed over like the torrent of billions of hard needles. They were aimed at Yang and Audrey. Each of the gold fragments had a wisp of Ivlines' soul consciousness. It seemed like he had fused his soul and his god power perfectly, giving the fragments consciousness so that they could lock Yang and Audrey precisely. The gold shower made a downpour. Audrey's departed souls shrieked in her soul altar. Her body emitted a cold aura, but her eyes looked frightened. She had just first sky of incipient god realm cultivation base while Ivlines was at first sky of immortal realm. His metal power Upanishad was profound and magical. His compatibility of god power and soul had surpassed most of the people with the metal power Upanishad in desolate territory. He had an absolute understanding of power and soul. Bloody shield. Yang wore a cold face. He rose one hand to touch the void. A sea of blood emerged and turned into a massive shield as large as the sky. The blood cloud mark on the shield moved like a blooming red flower. It had stopped all the gold fragments. Bang! 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 The gold fragments shelled on the bloody shield. Gold electric beams sparked as the metal power inside the fragment hit the shield hard. Blood burned in his body. A brutal aura shot out of Yang's head like a blood column connecting his body with the bloody shield. Boom! The bloody shield emitted blood halos. A deadly aura that could kill all the creatures expanded like sea water. Aga! Ivlines' eyes brightened. He screamed in astonishment. He was shocked because Yang could stop his supernatural power. Adams and Moshe behind him were also surprised. Evidently, they hadn't expected that Yang at third sky of incipient god realm could endure his senior's attack. They knew that Ivlines hadn't used all of his power, but if Yang could endure such an attack under the given circumstance of the big gap between their realms, this young man wasn't an ordinary warrior. "Kid, your god power is really abundant. No wonder you dare to travel around the sea domain of nihility even though you know nothing about it. But it's too bad for you since the first warrior you met here is me." Ivlines laughed contentedly. So many gold fragments emerged on Ivlines' palms like gold fireflies floating in the void. Those fragments condensed and congregated quickly. It became a gold saw that connected directly to his left arm. His arm shivered and the gold saw shot out a gold rainbow, using the sharpness of the metal power that could tear everything and fiercely slash the bloody shield. Bang! Millions of gold fragments sparked on the surface of the bloody shield. A dent appeared on the shield and the halo of many blood clouds dimmed out. Crack! Crack, crack. Shi Yang's body was cracking as if he was made of jade. His iron-like, tenacious body was torn by the terrifying shockwaves, his veins bulging under his skin. However, there was no bleeding. He shook his shoulder. A surging vitality arose in his body. The cracks and cuts on his skin were mended quickly. His body glowed in a blood halo. I know you're at the immortal realm. But since I came to this world, the one thing I'm good at is to breaking the arrogance and confidence of higher realm warriors, grinned Shi Yang. His power Upanishads switched. The commotion of the deep, vast sea of stars burst out from his body. Meteor dance. The starlight shot out of his 10 fingers like chains that coiled 10 surrounding asteroids. Instantly, those 10 asteroids had become his extended limbs and his weapons. 10 massive asteroids got out of the rapid asteroid current as the starlight chains pulled them. They grumblingly attacked Iveline's. Their aura was much fiercer than billions of Iveline's gold fragments. Iveline's face changed. Adams and Moshe exchanged looks, their faces stern. They had a new cognition of Shi Yang's boldness. Now, they felt regretful because Iveline's was so hasty. He shouldn't have made it so serious that they couldn't handle it. Audrey had good sense. She quietly retreated to Shi Yang's back and released her departed souls, her special power Upanishad. She used the souls to lock Iveline's commotion to prevent him from using the soul power to attack Shi Yang's consciousness. Typically, the high real warriors would have their soul consciousness be one level higher than the low realm warriors. Sometimes, they could use their soul consciousness to smash the spirit and cognition of the lower realm warriors, making them sheep waiting to be slaughtered. When Audrey got ambushed, Shi Yang had saved her. Otherwise, she would still be puzzled now. Thus, she was afraid that Shi Yang would be ambushed in the same way. She carefully used Imperial Dark Tribe's unique soul power Upanishad, which used so many departed souls as a defense to prevent Iveline's from using his soul to intrude them. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 10 massive asteroids were like 10 giant balls bombarding Iveline's. He didn't dare to forcefully stand. He turned into a cluster of gold and drifted away immediately. The gold saw was still connected to his limb. Under his control, it slashed on the bloody shield one more time. Not that easy, Shi Yang sneered. The fingers on his left hand flickered. An asteroid hissed while it moved to parry the gold saw. Countless gold light beams sparked. The big asteroid exploded and the chipped rock showered everywhere. Iveline's was shaken. The gold cloud he had transformed into dispersed. He reappeared limping, his face red. A trickle of blood dripped from his mouth. Apparently, he got hit one more time. This time, his god body was wounded. Chapter 1362 Lord of Stars. Chapter 1362 Lord of Stars. Shi Yang had a magical, cheery feeling. After he had refined his body with the mysteries from Hui's brain, his soul altar, body, and even his blood was sublimated. He hadn't really fought against anyone. While facing Iveline's today, he felt relaxed and calm as his god power, blood, and soul had reached a marvelously harmonious level that he had never dared to dream of. The branches of his god power ancient tree and his veins were connected. As soon as his mind flickered, the abundant star energy was triggered, overflowing unceasingly. Instantly, his body got filled with bursting energy without pausing or losing efficiency along the way. With just a beam of god power, he could maximize his power to the maximum. It had never happened like this before. Previously, when the god power in his lower abdomen was triggered, it would move through his veins before he could use it. During this process, there would be some delay and energy would be wasted along the way. He wouldn't be able to use all of the desired energy. Shi Yang focused on exploring his soul altar. His sea of consciousness, which was the lowest level, was now an immensely vast ocean. Innumerable beams of soul consciousness weren't misty or smoky anymore. Now, they were materialized into the liquid form of energy like real water. It was a dark sea with murmuring seawater where a core power that could nurture the soul was filled. The aura of this sea was even more formidable than the god power ancient tree. The sea of consciousness had become a real sea with immense, dark seawater that realized the dark steam. The thick, dark steam arose and nurtured the tier of power Upanishads, heaven flames, incipient extent, the host soul and the co-soul. It was like an eternal source of energy supplied to his soul altar. His eyes shot out of a divine light. Concentrating harder, he found that the energies in his sea of consciousness and the God power ancient tree were completely different. It was like two sides of a coin. Shi Yang was astounded, though. The God power ancient tree was dazzling like a massive diamond. The sea of consciousness was as dark as ink. It didn't reflect any light, but it murmured constantly. Once a wisp of soul consciousness flew out of the sea, it immediately turned transparent with the intimidating power. He suddenly had a feeling that his sea of consciousness was healing his soul altar and transforming it. Also, he had barely understood anything about the new energy, the dark energy in his sea of consciousness. At this moment, he had made up his mind. While he was in the sea domain, he had to decode this mysterious and yet wonderful energy. He had to get a good grasp of it. Rumble. 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 Although his mind changed constantly, the asteroids connecting to his 10 fingers had never paused. The starlight chains connected the asteroid and continued to bombard Ivelines crazily. Ivelines gathered the energy of his metal power Upanishad. The gold saws flew out of his body and moved like rainbows attacking Shi Yang. The massive asteroids gradually exploded with sparks and rocks. They had even rumbled an asteroid current. Whenever an asteroid exploded, Ivelines was shaken hard. He felt the bones in his entire body get hammered. His face reddened. Until the last asteroid exploded, Ivelines' red face paled. His eyes became dark and sinister. The currents of energy in his body moved chaotically. Around 10 gold saws hovered above his head. The teeth of the saws were thick like open mouths of monsters. His resentful eyes gazed at Shi Yang as he roared like a wild beast. The lid of his third eye shivered. A strong energy fluctuation came as if it was about to open. From the bottom of his heart, Shi Yang had an extremely dangerous feeling. With a grave face, he discreetly urged his power. The pure star energy moved through his veins like a rapid stream. Instantly, his blood chi became full and his life magnetic field was reaching another realm. Then, he transformed into his fighting form as if he was facing his archenemy. The bone wings jutted out of his back. Spikes grew on his shoulders, elbows, and knees. A natural keratin layer of armor fitted his lean body. His fingernails were now cold, sharp swords. An evil, brutal aura emitted from his new fighting form. It was like a hissing volcano in hell that was about to release something deadly scorching. Ivelines was so frightened. His third eye on the forehead convulsed as if it was about to open. Senior. Adams screamed in fear. Just like a wild tornado, he appeared and steadied by Ivelines. He said heavily, "It's just a trivial provocation. Would you risk your life with him?" Although this little buddy has third sky of incipient god realm, his real competences aren't weak. Senior, just let it go. While he was talking to Ivelines, he used the language of desolate territory so that Shi Yang and Audrey could understand. However, while talking loudly, he had sent a discreet soul message to Ivelines. This kid's blood isn't ordinary. He can activate the power of his blood to transform. I'm afraid that he's not easy to deal with. Senior, your soul and body are wounded. It's not easy to win single-handedly. Let's pretend to not get a hold to it. You and I will join hands and find the right opportunity to hit him and kill him instantly. Adams was using his soul to talk to Ivelines. As Ivelines was listening to Adams' secret message, his third eye didn't open. He looked as if he was considering Adams' suggestion. Not far from them, Moshe sighed weakly. She knew that Adams was even more extreme than Ivelines, and that man was filled with evil thoughts. When she saw that Adams didn't use the language of the Heavenly Eye clan to tell Ivelines to retreat, she figured out their plan immediately. She understood that Adams now had another plan. He wanted to use his dark mind to handle this. In fact, it was also Adams' plan when Ivelines had pretended to be friendly to talk to the others and then suddenly used his soul to ambush them to find the truth out of them. In this group of 3, Adams was the most cunning one. He was their insidious strategist. Moshe understood their ideas. She covered her mouth, her face disbelieving. She thought that with Adams talking and Evelyn's nodding begrudgingly, she believed that Shi Yang would stop fighting. Anyway, Adams was at the immortal realm and she herself was at third sky of incipient god realm. If they had good sense, they would know that they shouldn't attack furthermore. However, right at this moment, when Evelyn's nodded begrudgingly and retreated his gold swords, that wild, young man grinned fiendishly and dashed forward. Moshe discolored in fear. Audrey didn't know the reason. Her beautiful eyes looked puzzled. She didn't know why Shi Yang still wanted to fight when her side apparently ceased to fight. Who do you think you are? You think you can kill, and when you can't do that, you want to retreat. It's not that easy. 10 starlight beams gathered into one. Shi Yang abruptly disappeared into the starlight. The brilliant starlight band drifted toward Evelyn's and Adams like a magnificent ribbon. The starlight bands moved beautifully. A strong life energy surged like the giant wave. After that fierce life energy, a cold, death intent emerged and swept around. At the same time, dozens of giant space blades that were floating freely near them were attracted by the starlight. Moving with a long tail, they slashed toward the others forcefully. Inside the turbulent asteroid current, the space blades moving through the gaps between the asteroids were the most furious and dangerous things. Moshe had seen the space blades slashing the giant floating rocks into powder. She believed that Evelyn's and Adams would perish when the space blade lacerated them. Kid, you're crazy. Adams changed his visage. Shi Yang attacked forcefully, ruining their plan before they could carry it out. At this moment, to show that he cooperated, Evelyn's had retrieved his metal power. When he saw the torrential starlight torrent coming with formidable space blades, his scalp felt numb. They didn't take Shi Yang's characteristics into account, and he had underestimated Shi Yang's intimidating and brutal ways. They were going to receive a big loss this time. Space drill. The sharp space sabers were hundreds of meters long. They came magnificently and were deadly. The sharp sabers glided through the void and sizzled. The asteroids along their way were smashed instantly. The space sabers pressed down like a keen drill from the sky. Adams and Evelyn's were shaken hard. They didn't have time to consider the situation. They immediately urged their power to the acme. They had to move swiftly like lightning bolts in between the asteroids. They didn't dare to stop for even a moment. Mwahaha. All of you should pay a big price. Shi Yang grinned fiendishly. The asteroids around Evelyn's and Adams seemed to be activated quickly. They deviated while shooting forward. Grumblingly, they barged into the two of them. While they weren't alerted, many asteroids had hit them hard. They coughed up blood and looked extremely helter-skelter. Those asteroids were like 1,000-meter-high mountains that were as heavy as the immortal island. As Shi Yang's star energy had connected to them and was controlling them with his god power, they became his lethal weapons. In this vast sea of stars, Shi Yang's star power Upanishad was an abnormal power. Innumerable asteroids in this place could become his weapons. Fighting against him here was just like seeking death. Even though Adams and Evelyn's had higher realms, Shi Yang had the right timing and condition here. He could hurt them hard. Seniors. Moshe screamed piercingly. The flaming crystal cloud boat she was riding changed its route. Fire clouds emitted from the flaming crystal. Their asteroid turned into a starlight band and shot toward Adams and Evelyn's. The two of them had blood all over their faces. At this moment, their souls were shaken hard. They had given up the thought of taking revenge. They immediately hopped on the flaming crystal. Adams urged, "Go. Leave this place immediately. It's so unfortunate. What kind of monster did we encounter?" Evelyn's put on a dark and harsh face, looking at Shi Yang sinisterly. "Wait until my soul and god body recover. I will come to take your life. You've bullied us intolerably. He's a harsh bully. Don't talk like that. Oh, he's chasing after us. Gosh. He wants to hunt us down," Moshe screamed, her face pale and cold. Inside the torrential asteroid flow, Shi Yang was like a brilliant comet that flew toward them at breakneck speed. The asteroids in his way had proactively made way for him as if he was the lord of the galaxy who could control the stars and the asteroids. He was born as the Lord of Stars. Chapter 1363 A Bad Hand Destroys the Flower. Chapter 1363 A Bad Hand Destroys the Flower. Ivelines and Adams looked back, their faces changed as they were filled with terrible regrets. Shiyang zoomed over through the chaotic asteroid current. The rocks in his way automatically drifted aside to give him lots of room. The shining, sharp space sabers hovered by him and gave him an unrivaled aura. With his body as a shooting star, the asteroids making his way, and the sharp space sabers moving around him, the power that Shiyang performed this time was like a deep seal imprinted in Ivelines and Adams. They had to hiss in pain. If they had known Shiyang was that bold, even if they had to die, they wouldn't have provoked them. Now, they had this slaughtering comet after them. What should they do? For the time being, Ivelines and Adam were so regretful. Seeing Shiyang coming like a deadly rainbow, their scalps felt numb. They thought that they would perish this time. You don't want to let us go, do you? Moshe stepped up. While her two seniors were hurt, she came to the back of the flaming crystal cloud boat to face Shiyang. Magically, when Ivelines and Adams saw her walking out, they didn't look worried at all. Their eyes brightened. It seemed like they had great confidence in her. What? Shiyang squinted, his paws open. Instinctively, he smelt danger. He coldly looked at the heavenly eye woman and scanned her body. If your seniors didn't want to kill us, I wouldn't be hunting them down. When your seniors attacked me, I didn't see you prevent them. What is it good for now? A shining, thin space saber radiated a dazzling light, which had the death intent domain that could swallow all kinds of creatures. Just like a demon from hell, it snatched over the flaming crystal cloud boat. After reaching third sky of incipient god realm, he could combine the space, star, death and life power Upanishads easily whenever his thoughts changed. It seemed like he could create a new supernatural ability easily. Different energies and techniques in his hands showcased as if they had consciousness. His attacks could become so profound and magical. The shining space saber had the power of the starlight and the death intent domain. It was truly the combination of space, star, and death. Ordinary people could never resist such an attack. Shiyang believed that even Adams and Ivelines would find it hard to resist it. At this moment, Adams and Ivelines were both injured. Their souls and bodies were hurt. They didn't dare to use their god power to face this attack forcefully. They could only dodge it. He wanted to force them to dodge, indeed. As long as they jumped out of this flaming asteroid, he would immediately control the sharp saber to smash this asteroid. He wanted to force the others to fight against him in the current of asteroids. He had soon recognized the magical power of the flaming crystal asteroid that they were riding. It could dodge the dangers in the turbulent current and it could glide through the space scythes and the explosions easily. It had the same effects as the asteroid with the three-legged jade cauldron as its core. As soon as the others got out of the asteroid's protection, Shiyang was confident that he could kill Adams and Ivelines in this asteroid torrent. Because those space rocks were under his control, they listened to his star power Upanishad. Do you really think that we don't have the power to counterattack? Moshe became cold. Her clothes fluttered without the wind. It looked like she had electric currents flashing through her curly brown hair. The terrifying roar suddenly arose from inside Moshe's body. She touched her glabella and her third eye opened, illuminating the entire world. The beautiful purple light immediately shrouded the area in front of her. In that violet light, a beast with a dragon head and a lion's body that was as imposing as a grand mountain emerged. It roared at Shiyang angrily. Boom! The shockwaves came unceasingly and pounded the asteroids along the way into powder. Even the space sabers exploded. The energy surged through Moshe's third eye and gushed toward the body of the beast that had the dragon head and the lion body. The strong beast became fiercer. In the faint violet light, it barged over and roared terrifyingly. Its sharp claws pulled and exploded everything in its way. It angrily roared and threw its mountain-like claw at Shiyang's head. The cold light that had an extremely keen power sparkled on the beast's claws. This strike could smash Shi Yang's bones within a second and turn him into a pulp of flesh like those asteroids. The beast with the dragon head and a lion body was the holy mascot of Mosha's family. She had to use her third eye to summon and use her own energy to activate it. The third eye of the Heavenly Eye clan had a special ability to summon the beast to help the master in fighting. Legends of the Heavenly Eye clan said that their third eye could connect to various kinds of animals and it could generate a unique power Upanishad. It was their core power, but once the third eye was activated, the side effects would hurt the user severely. However, the energy it could release was extremely formidable. The beast Mosha had summoned with her third eye was the holy mascot of her family. When it got her blood chi and energy, it was so powerful that Adams and Evelyn's couldn't counter it. It was also because of the supernatural power of Mosha's third eye that Adams and Evelyn's had brought her with them when she had only third sky of incipient god realm. However, Adams and Evelyn's understood that whenever she used the power of the third eye, no matter what happened, she would get poorly hurt. The energy she pumped to the beast couldn't recover quickly. Thus, when she opened her third eye, the two of them made up their mind. They had to kill Shi Yang at any cost. Rumble. 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 The brutal beast had crushed all the asteroids in its way. Its roaring also pressed the sharp space sabers and exploded them. Its ferocious power was released and locked Shi Yang in its tracks. It was storming toward him furiously. Mosha paled, her plump body becoming thinner quickly. It seemed like even her flesh was being consumed. At the same time, the purple light projected from her third eye became more dazzling. The beast in that light had rocketed its power too. Watch out. The blood chi of that beast has almost reached Lei Di, the immemorial thunder dragon's level. Although it doesn't have a power Upanishad to use, it's not a joke. Audrey rode the fast asteroid. Her beautiful eyes rolled as she reminded Shi Yang not to be careless. Shi Yang's face became extremely stern. Seeing the beast barge in, his blood chi burst out like a formidable erupting volcano in hell. The bone wings behind his back flapped and released torrential blood waves that carried the crimson blood chi that could destroy everything. Wisps of energy in his sea of consciousness filled his body. His fearsome body flashed as if he was moving through darkness and light alternatively. When the dark energy seeped through, the space where he was staying exploded. Even the sea domain was shaking as if it was about to collapse. Inside that rapid asteroid current, dozens of massive rocks melted inaudibly. "Come here!" Shi Yang screamed indignantly. He suddenly disappeared as if he could go invisible. Swish! A bleeding cut appeared right in the chest of the dragon-headed lion. The energy rippling through its body looked like wooden patterns. It howled, screeched, and stormed toward the void, using its claws and fangs to tear and pull while wagging its long tail. Boom! 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 Shi Yang in his invisible state was hit by the claws. He felt like a massive battleship had just bumped into him. His body shook hard. The blood in his body boiled. He reappeared. The bone wings fluttered like a saw cutting off the tail of the beast. Unexpectedly, Shi Yang's bone wings had broken the purple-patterned tail of the beast. Crack! Crack! Shi Yang's sharp fingernails thrust into the beast. It sounded like shattering diamonds when the beast's skeleton exploded. P2E. Mosha vomited blood, her face as ashen as a sheet of white paper. The light projecting from her third eyes dimmed. She looked ash-gray. Hesitating for a few seconds, she touched her chest. Her heart began to beat frantically 10 times faster than usual. The beast seemed to receive more boosts. It became super strong and more savage instantly. Shi Yang was surprised. Evelyn's was bewildered. He was about to open his third eye. However, seeing Mosha trigger the power in her heart, he discolored and screamed, "No!" Adams cried, his face ashen. "Don't!" They ignored Shi Yang and dashed toward Mosha. They both rose one hand to cover her third eye. As soon as the purple light was covered, the dragon-headed lion started dying. It faded and disappeared slowly. Mosha's face didn't have color. Her soft body quivered. Her frantic heart suddenly became sluggish. She looked even more vulnerable than before she had triggered her energy. Her heart gradually ceased to beat. Her situation was extremely strange. "I want to kill him. I want to kill him." Evelyn's burst out crazy. His third eye twitched as if it was about to open. He also wanted to use his power Upanishad that would consume his vitality. "Saving our sister is much more important," shouted Adams. Evelyn's eyes were garnet. Hearing Adams calling, he reacted fast. Their third eyes slowly opened and released green and blue light respectively. The lights from their eyes were like a life magnetic field that covered Moshe. The magical life energy from the light slowly entered Moshe's third eye. Ashen Moshe steadied her breathing as the lights shrouded her. Her weak heart gradually started beating faster. Then, Shiyang landed on their flaming crystal cloud boat. He looked interested, observing and walking toward them. "Shiyang." Audrey was sitting on the asteroid. Because it was moving fast, she was close to Shiyang now. She looked at him from a distance and frowned. "We shouldn't be extreme. We're new here. We shouldn't offend many people. It would be very hard for us later." Shiyang chuckled and shook his head. "I have never been merciful to enemies. If I wasn't strong enough, you and I would have been killed this time. They wouldn't show mercy, you know." While talking, he walked toward Evelyn's, Adams, and Moshe. Evelyn's and Adams were in the critical process of their healing procedure to save Moshe. Although they knew that the young man didn't come with goodwill, they couldn't be distracted. Deep resentment appeared in their eyes, but they didn't dare to pause the healing process. If they stopped the treatment, Moshe would die when her life magnetic field got drained. "Well, I didn't expect that you two seniors would have a deep affection for your sister. Love is really harmful to people. I didn't expect that you would give up fighting to maintain her life magnetic field. It's touching to me." Shiyang frowned. He urged his power and the dark energy in his sea of consciousness created two strange marks. The blood cloud mark that naked eyes couldn't see flew out of his glabella and disappeared into Adams and Evelyn's hearts. That energy could trigger the destructive energy to crush their hearts instantly. Shiyang knew that besides the soul, the heart was the weakest point of the heavenly eye warriors. They were different from Shiyang. Even if his heart was broken, he could use his blood to create another one. When the marks entered Adams and Evelyn's, it meant that Shiyang had controlled their lives now. He didn't feel shameful when he attacked the other two while they couldn't be distracted. "Come over here. It's safe now. We can talk to them nicely," Shiyang waved at Audrey. Chapter 1364, Dragon Lizard Clan. Chapter 1364, Dragon Lizard Clan. On the flaming crystal cloud boat, Evelyn's and Adams were projecting green and blue light that covered Moshe's body. It was like the life original fluid that could nurture and refill her life magnetic field. Moshe's slow heartbeat became steady. At that moment, Shiyang sent the blood cloud mark to Evelyn's and Adams' hearts. The other two could feel it clearly, but they didn't have the power to resist. They had to wait until Moshe had recovered to plan their next step. Not far from them, Audrey felt relaxed when she saw Shiyang not kill the others immediately. She furrowed her brows and called him, "What should I do with this asteroid?" The asteroid she was riding had the mysterious three-legged cauldron as the core. The massive cauldron had so many symbols, which was the language of the absolute beginning era and carried endless mysteries. Audrey and Shiyang wanted to decode the language and the magical power of the cauldron so they couldn't let the cauldron drift away from their sight. Hearing her, Shiyang was bewildered for a while. Then, he said, "Oh, it's simple." He then sent a surging starlight band to chain the flaming asteroid. The flaming crystal cloud boat was pulled and it hissed all the way toward Audrey. Adams, Evelyn's, and Moshe, the owners of the cloud boat, couldn't get distracted to do anything else. They could only stare at Shiyang using his god power to deviate them. Boom! The entire flaming crystal fell on Audrey's asteroid. It wasn't really big. After landing on the asteroid with the three-legged cauldron inside, the flaming asteroid took around a quarter of the area. The flaming asteroid stopped. Audrey's beautiful eyes brightened. She agilely hopped on it. Shortly after, she stood by Shiyang and used her cold and calm eyes to look at the other three. Evelyn's and Adams were still releasing their energy to heal their sister Moshe. Mosha's aura slowly regained and her exhausted life magnetic field became sufficient. The Heavenly Eye clan is strange, indeed. They could share the soul energy through the third eye. What a mysterious race. Audrey focused on observing them for a while. She felt interested and more curious as she was watching the other three. Her soul power Upanishad was really marvelous. It helped her be more sensitive to soul energy fluctuations. She found that Evelyn's and Adam's could use their third eye to send the energy of their host souls to Mosha and increase her life magnetic field and it give her vitality. It seemed to be a supernatural power that only the Heavenly Eye clan could perform using the third eye. Although they didn't know life power Upanishad, they still could use the third eye to create the same effect. It was really subtly magical. Perhaps it's the special innate power of their race, nodded Shiyang. Different races have different magical features. The God Clan, Imperial Dark Tribe, and Heavenly Monster Tribe have their unique features in their bodies and souls. This vast sea of stars had so many races. Of course, they didn't always have similar features in their souls, bodies, or powers Upanishads. Shiyang and Audrey casually talked to each other while quietly observing the other three. After a long while, Evelyn's and Adam's looked dormant, but Mosha woke up. She opened her eyes, which were filled with resentment. She hissed, "What did you do to my two seniors?" To heal her, Evelyn's and Adam's who were hurt already had to spend more vital energy, which had pushed them into a vulnerable situation. They were even weaker than Mosha now. Thus, Mosha could wake up first while the other two still needed to steady their soul energy in the soul altar. "It's really touching," Shiyang curled his lips. He looked like he was smiling, but he actually didn't smile. "Your two brothers are evil and cunning. They don't talk about rules or morality. But they treat you honestly. Haha. To save your life, they didn't care about their safety to give you vital energy. They've touched me. They made observers like us feel touched. If they hadn't cared about Mosha, Adams and Evelyn's wouldn't have had to bear Shiyang's blood mark. They would have had an opportunity to escape. Because of Marsha, they decided to stay and heal her regardless of their lives. I admit that my brothers were a little extreme. However, they hadn't really hurt you guys yet. We even introduced the basic knowledge of the universe to you. What else do you want?" Mosha took a deep breath, her eyes keen. "Don't push us too much. Otherwise, I can pay with my broken cultivation to kill all of you." Shiyang, Audrey arched her brows and said, "Leave it to me." Shiyang shrugged. He said, "Good then. It's easier to let a woman talk to a woman. Your two seniors had risked their lives to save yours. I wonder if you care about theirs too?" Audrey asked, her cold face arrogant. "Now, your brothers' lives are in our hands. If we want, we can kill them instantly." Mosha discolored and gritted her teeth. She shot a malicious look to Audrey. Audrey didn't change her complexion as she spoke faintly. "Actually, we won't hunt you down to the last one. We need your knowledge. As long as you cooperate by giving a thorough explanation as required by us, I'm sure you can survive well." She turned around and confirmed with Shiyang, "Right?" Shrugging, Shiyang said relaxedly, "You're right." Audrey was the princess of Imperial Dark Tribe and she used to work with Shiyang when they were on Desolate. Before he had shown his power, Audrey was the leader of the group of the outstanding warriors from many star areas. Shiyang didn't doubt her wisdom and keen eyes. He knew she would try her best for them. If he wanted to kill them, he would have done so already. What he wanted was what Audrey was carrying out. They needed more information about the vast sea of stars. In the best case, they wanted to know the direction to return to Desolate Territory. If they knew the mysteries of this place, they could make their plan and journey easily. Apparently, Audrey knew what they lacked the most at this moment. She acted at a normal pace, her face indifferent. "Killing you guys will bring nothing to us. We need your cooperation." Listening to her, Mosha's resentment subsided. She pondered for a while and then said, "We should wait until my seniors woke up." "Not a problem. In this area, time is something we have a lot of," said Audrey calmly. After a while, Evelyn's opened his eyes, his face dark. He looked at Shiyang indignantly and gritted his teeth like a caged beast. His mood wasn't stable. Shi Yang grinned and his mind flickered, activating a wisp of power. Iveline's felt like his heart got hammered. His body stiffened, his face pale. He clutched his chest and crouched on the ground. You! Moshe screamed ear-piercingly like a beast. She wanted to storm over and fight Shi Yang. Calm down. Do you want your brothers to live or not? It's your brother who got angry first. I think you should talk to your brothers so they could know their position. Don't think that you guys still control everything, Audrey bellowed, her eyes chilling. Her soul power accompanied her voice and entered Moshe's sea of consciousness directly. Moshe felt like ice had just poured into her body. Her soft body quivered and she resumed her sound mind. She hurried to advise the other two. Seniors, they didn't want to kill us. They just need our cooperation. Adams woke up. He wore a bitter, sorrowful face as he sighed. Sister, you're innocent. They won't let us leave alive. After they get what they want to know, they will kill us. If it happens that way, I would rather fight against them with my life. If we sacrifice our lives to hold them down, you can escape. As he was cruel himself, he thought that the others would act like him. He always assessed people with his best evil thoughts. He didn't buy what Audrey had promised and assured them. Iveline's had the same thought. He didn't want to cooperate, either. Audrey arched her brows. She had a headache from the other two's bad thoughts. If they didn't believe her and wanted to make them die altogether, it was going to be really hard to work with them. She couldn't help but look at Shi Yang. Shi Yang wore an odd face. In fact, he didn't bear good thoughts. In his eyes, such characters like Iveline's and Adams had to be swallowed after they had no value to him at all. He increased his power that way. He didn't expect that the other two would want to kill everyone altogether instead of cooperating. Rubbing his chin, he sighed. He now had the new cognition of how cunning and evil the alien races could be. He knew that if he didn't handle it well, what he got would be 3 corpses with no useful information. You're evil. He snorted and his mind changed as he retrieved the marks planted in Iveline's and Adam's hearts. Then, he said, you're free now. Even if we fight again, it will be pretty tough for us to kill you all. Yeah. I think you know we're not the squishy persimmon that you can squeeze as you please. For big goals, he could let things go when he should. It was the fundamental characteristic of the ones who could scheme big things. Audrey's eyes brightened. She couldn't hide her compliments for him. She nodded and smiled at him before turning to the others. Can we talk now? I'm afraid not, Moshe was startled. She looked at the halo that suddenly emitted from a ring on her wrist and said, the members of the Dragon Lizard clan are right in front of us. We're about to encounter them soon. It seems like we're not far from the Dragon Lizard clan's territory. We need to pass a test. Are you kidding? Shi Yang put on the cold face. Although Iveline's and Adams were freed, they didn't give Shi Yang good face. They stood up by Moshe and were ready to fight in any minute. I just found a situation. I didn't mean it. After the test, we will discuss again, Moshe said with a cold face, and then she turned tender. She said, Seniors, leave it to me. Don't be too impulsive. If you had listened to me, you wouldn't have been wounded badly like this. Adams and Iveline's hesitated for a while and sighed inwardly. Eventually, they nodded. Chapter 1365, An Absolute Beginning Weapon. Chapter 1365, An Absolute Beginning Weapon. A white war chariot made of beast bones emerged in the asteroid current ahead and carried around 10 aliens. They were holding long spears and standing upright. Those aliens had grey-brown skin with a humped back. They had sharp horns on their heads while their bodies dragged a long tail. This long tail was as rigid as iron or steel with a lot of bizarre patterns. They were around 3 meters tall, their appearance fearsome. They had large hands with hook-like fingers. The auras shooting from their bodies were abundant and ferocious. This group of 10 aliens was riding the White Bone War chariot and moving around the asteroid current to patrol. They're the members of the Dragon Lizard clan. Moshe looked at them. The ring on her wrist glowed. Just like a strange pass token, it attracted the members of the Dragon Lizard clan. They immediately approached. Audrey discolored. She quietly stayed close to Shi Yang and hid behind him. She didn't dare to show her face. Her realm was pretty low in this place. From the body of those lizard warriors, she could feel the terrifying aura. Thus, she was wise enough to stay behind. They got only one first sky of immortal realm and the rest are at incipient god realm. You don't need to worry a lot, comforted Shi Yang. They are guards in the peripheral area of the dragon lizard clan. At this time, the dragon lizard wakes up and has his meal. He attracts a lot of people to come here, but only the ones with the pass token can really enter the dragon lizard clan's territory. They are the bouncers. Troublemakers or the ones who have offended the dragon lizard clan will be stopped outside. They won't allow those people to enter their territory deeply, explained Moshe. It was also her first time visiting this outer space area. Anyway, Adams and Ivelines had explained everything to her. She had the knowledge unlike the ignorant Shi Yang and Audrey, who had nothing but mist in their heads. Shi Yang nodded, his face extremely stern. He was ready to take action at any minute. He didn't know what the cunning Adams and Ivelines would do after he released them. If they joined the Dragon Lizard clan warriors to attack him, he had to maintain his fighting form and fiercely smash their confidence. Let me deal with them. Moshe looked deeply at her two seniors. Adams and Ivelines pulled a cold face and didn't say anything. It meant that they agreed with her. Moshe immediately pitched up her voice, using a strange language to communicate with the members of the Dragon Lizard clan, who had just approached them. She handed the ring on her wrist to the leader at the immortal realm of the patrol team. That man had ferocious eyes with a murderous aura. He received the pass token and checked it personally. After that, his countenance became more friendly. He pointed at Audrey and Shi Yang, the ones who apparently didn't belong to Moshe's clan, as if he was asking about their identities. Moshe had prepared an excuse, so she told him fluently. The man pondered for a while and then waved his hand to dismiss the others. Right after that, the asteroid Shi Yang was riding on glided through the guards of the Dragon Lizard clan, blending with the asteroid torrent. They continued to move toward the Dragon Lizard clan's territory. What did you tell him? Audrey was surprised. I told him that you guys were our slaves. Moshe didn't conceal it. Your realms are relatively low. Saying so allowed you to go. It's because the warriors from your desolate territory haven't appeared in the sea domain of nihility for a long time. The members of the Dragon Lizard clan aren't familiar with your kind, either. After they had passed the checking point of the Dragon Lizard clan, Moshe relaxed. Adams and Ivelines also felt much safer. Their knitted brows relaxed. Many people at the immortal realm from our desolate territory also come here to train. No one has ever met them. Audrey couldn't understand. It was what concerned Shi Yang too. He knew that Xian He and the four great heavenly kings of the God clan used to cultivate in this sea domain of nihility. Even Spark at the false immortal realm had come to the peripheral area. Rumor said that Ming Hao, the soul control chief, had hidden his real body in the sea domain of nihility. Thus, why did Moshe say that the creatures from desolate territory hadn't visited this place for a long time? Xian He, Ming Hao, and the four great heavenly kings have never communicated with those aliens. It was unimaginable. Perhaps the warriors from desolate territory also move around the sea domain. However, they haven't come to the area where creatures gather. Maybe they don't know the specific regions where the high-level creatures appeared. Even if they have wandered around for thousands of years, they might not have seen anyone. You know that the sea domain of nihility is immensely vast, explained Moshe. It's like wandering around a vast sea alone, and there are many people like you who come from different shores. How big is the possibility for you guys to meet up? Unless you know some islands that people often visit and go to, the chances are not very high. She gave a direct and lively example. Shi Yang and Audrey understood the matter immediately. The sea domain of nihility was so vast that a lot of races dwelled in it. However, they only went to some specific zones. If you didn't know those places, it was like finding the needle in a haystack. The chance that they could meet people was so tiny. The sea domain was so vast. It would take an immortal realm expert hundreds or even 1,000 years to run from one region to another region. Adams and Ivelines weren't so friendly to Shiyang, but they didn't stop Moshe from explaining the situation to them. It was because it was just general knowledge that wouldn't affect them a bit. She would never disclose anything related to the secret of the Heavenly Eye clan. Misha's words filled Audrey with sadness. If there were no creatures from desolate territory operating here, Audrey wasn't going to be able to find someone she knew to find the way home. In other words, they were going to be stuck here for a long time. What do you know about the dark energy? Asked Shiyang all of a sudden. From what Zi Yarrow and Tian Xie had said, he knew that the new power in his sea of consciousness was called the dark energy. It was also the energy that Bloodthirsty had controlled that year. Besides Bloodthirsty, he was the second one who understood that energy in desolate territory. He understood that the dark energy was very powerful and intimidating. However, he didn't know how to use it. He didn't know about its origin and its particular features. He thought that Moshe's team had communicated with the aliens a lot, so perhaps she knew something about the dark energy. He wanted to know more about the dark energy. Strangely, Moshe was so surprised that she shook her head. Dark energy? What kind of energy is that? I have never heard about it before. Ivelines, who had kept silent for a long time, suddenly discolored. He looked frightened. He gazed at Shiyang and asked, You killed the owner of desolate territory and replaced the absolute beginning creature there? Not yet, Shiyang shook his head. Then how do you know the dark energy? Ivelines was astounded. Shiyang was surprised. He was moved. He urged the power in his sea of consciousness. His body faded and turned invisible. An invisible soul energy rippled and the void around them seemed to shatter. The massive asteroids were smashed by an invisible hand. I can use the dark energy. Although I'm at the most preliminary phase, I control that power, he explained. Ivelines was shaken. He took a deep breath and said bitterly, If you had told us that you control that power, we wouldn't have touched you. You're such a monster. Senior. Adams was also bewildered. Since he didn't know how marvelous the dark energy was, he looked skeptical. That dark energy is also called the negative energy. It totally contrasts to our God power. This kind of energy can't be recognized. However, along with the energies that control this vast sea of stars, it's deemed the energy of the creators. Only the ones understanding the dark energy could create the universe and get through the immortal realm to reach the level of the territory ancestor. In this vast sea of stars, not many people could control the dark energy. Each of them is an absolute character who can shoulder the entire world. The dark energy can create the world or the new universe. It's the mysterious energy that only the experts at the territory ancestors level could have. It comes from the strongest creatures in the absolute beginning era. Legends said that the absolute beginning era ended because of the overuse of dark energy. It shattered the entire universe. The partially collapsed pieces of the universe had created the sea domain of nihility we see today. Our Heavenly Eye clan doesn't have any warrior cultivating the dark energy. As far as I know, each expert who controls the dark energy has become the territory ancestor of a world. The territory ancestor is the title of the peerless experts who have surpassed the immortal realm. They could create a world belonging to them. They could create creatures. Each of the strong absolute beginning creatures is one of the territory ancestors. They are the ancestors of a universe. They control the lives of the creatures living there. They could distort the rules of nature as they are the sole god of that world. When he looked at Shiyang again, he was filled with fear. You've reached only third sky of incipient god realm, but you can control the dark energy. No wonder why you're so fierce. It means that after you've reached the immortal realm, you will become more domineering. Also, it's possible that you can become a new territory ancestor. You can create your own world with unique creatures. What he said had shaken the others. Adams and Moshe were also frightened. When they looked at Shiyang, they didn't keep their usual complexion. The precursor from the second generation of the Dragon Lizard clan, the one called Dragon Lizard, can pull the current of asteroids while eating. Does he know the dark energy? Asked Shiyang strangely. No, Ivelines shook his head. His realm and power are approaching the territory ancestors level. Unfortunately, he hasn't mastered the dark energy yet, so he can't create a whole new world. He can't be deemed the new territory ancestor. Anyway, he's a peerless warrior, indeed. He's very famous in the sea domain of nihility. After they knew that Shi Yang had the dark energy, Ivelines changed his attitude toward Shi Yang. It seemed like he had forgotten the resentment they had caused. He was so cooperative and he answered everything the others asked him. Shi Yang looked disappointed. When he heard that Dragon Lizard was the second generation of Lizard, the absolute beginning creature, he thought that Dragon Lizard controlled the dark energy. He hoped to know the features of this marvelous power. Unexpectedly, such a formidable creature like him hadn't decoded the true power of dark energy yet. He suddenly recognized that if Bloodthirsty wasn't killed that year, he could have been the character at the Lord level in this sea domain of nihility. Rubbing his chin, he pondered for a while and then used the space saber to cut the asteroid underneath, revealing a part of the three-legged jade cauldron. He exposed the tadpole characters and asked, "Is it the language of the absolute beginning era? Do you know those symbols? Also, do you know how to tame this thing?" Ivelines stooped to observe and then he became petrified. After a long time, he pulled himself together and asked, "Please tell the truth. Did you kill the territory ancestor and replace it? Otherwise, why do you control the dark energy and the divine weapon from the absolute beginning era?" Chapter 1366, A Derelict Item. Chapter 1366, A Derelict Item. An absolute beginning divine weapon? Shi Yang let out a low shout as he was surprised. He looked at the cauldron underneath and said, "Is this really a weapon from the absolute beginning era? Are you sure?" Ivelines had an awkward expression. "Although I don't know absolute beginning characters, I used to see them before. They are real absolute beginning characters. I'm not making a mistake. Since you know the dark energy, you must have contacted the absolute beginning creature. Why don't you know the absolute beginning era's characters?" He found that it was so inexplicable. More than Shi Yang. "So, you don't know how to tame it?" Shi Yang looked disappointed. The truth about the greatness of dark energy and the divine weapons from the absolute beginning era is shared between a very small group of people. I haven't reached such a high realm yet." Ivelines showed his admiration. "At your realm, you quickly understood the dark energy. You will definitely become an existence at the territory ancestor level. I beg for your mercy. Please forgive us for we have offended you." He looked really honest. Adams and Mash were bewildered. They could react timely. They immediately bowed and tried to look humble. They didn't want to offend an expert who could bring a disaster to the Heavenly Eye clan. In their clan, the three of them were outstanding experts. They had joined hands, but they couldn't kill Shi Yang. At the same time, Shi Yang had endless room to grow and he could control the dark energy and even a divine weapon from the absolute beginning era. Such an existence would become a character that would top the pyramid of the Sea of Stars. Although Ivelines had cunning and evil deeds, he did have a wide vision. He knew that there were people he shouldn't provoke. The three members of the Heavenly Eye clan had changed their attitude, which surprised Shi Yang a lot. Even when he had planted a deadly mark into their hearts, he couldn't make them follow him. However, just a glimpse of dark energy made Ivelines, the most stubborn among the three, subdued. He showed Shi Yang the most humble facet of his. The situation had developed into a tendency that Shi Yang and Audrey had never expected. At this moment, they were both startled. "You should hide this absolute beginning divine weapon. Or else, it will draw a lot of troubles." Ivelines contemplated for a while and then suggested, "Our competencies aren't really excellent. We know how strong you are. We won't be greedy. However, we will encounter more experts when we get closer to the Dragon Lizard clan's territory. I'm sure we will meet someone stronger than us. If they know you have the absolute beginning weapon, they will try their best to rob it from you." Pausing for a while, Ivelines looked yearning. "As far as I've known, in this vast sea of stars, the number of real absolute beginning divine weapons can be counted on with your fingers. Each of them is so earth-shaking that I can't describe it to you. Only the experts at the territory ancestor level can control those weapons. They won't be afraid that someone can snatch it. And only they can maximize the real power of those weapons. The absolute beginning divine weapons are extreme weapons of the absolute beginning era. Some say that the absolute beginning creatures had forged them, and some say that they were born naturally at the beginning of the universe. They are super powerful and supernatural. They could promote the warriors to the ultimate level. Listening to Iveline's, Shi Yang and Audrey exchanged looks. They all looked moved. It's not really possible to tame it within a short time. Do you have any method to conceal it or stash it away? Whispered Audrey. Shi Yang forced a smile. How do you know if this thing is derelict or not? Their conversation surprised Iveline's team. Moshe hesitated for a while and then said, so that absolute beginning divine weapon isn't yours? If it were ours, why would we ask you a lot of questions about it? Shi Yang suddenly got a headache. He had a dejected feeling like someone sitting on a gold mountain who couldn't exploit it. This marvelous treasure was underneath, but they couldn't refine or tame it to get to know its superpower. If it isn't yours, why are you riding on it? Iveline's was bewildered. His eyes brightened. So, it's unowned now? You didn't see its owner, did you? He suddenly became so excited, speaking with a red face. I heard that the absolute beginning weapons have consciousness and they can choose the master themselves. It depends on good encounters. The attributes of the power Upanishad can make the weapon subdued and follow you. There are many studies about this. Some even said that if you have good fortune, you can. Adams and Moshe cheered up. They felt like they were the ones with that good encounter. They thought they could be the ones with the required attributes mentioned in legends. They gathered by the area where the symbols were exposed and then released the soul consciousness, urging their power Upanishad. They were trying to create some resonance to make the divine weapon notice them. They even forgot about Shi Yang, a deadly danger. The big enticement of the absolute beginning divine weapon was so irresistible. They had even forgotten themselves. However, shortly after, they retrieved their power, their faces pale and aghast. The soul energy they had released had fallen into the center of the three-legged jade cauldron and vanished. They couldn't retrieve anything. The exposed area of the jade cauldron seemed to have more symbols. Nothing else had happened. Was it the thing that had swallowed my soul energy? Iveline's finally reacted. Shi Yang nodded with a bitter smile. Don't try anymore. I repeat, do not try. Your soul will be drained. Iveline's gritted his teeth, snorted, and stopped Adams and Moshe. I think this absolute beginning divine weapon is broken or incomplete. Otherwise, it wouldn't behave that way. Audrey's bright eyes became clear. I'm noticing one thing. Whenever it gathers more soul energy, it will have more symbols on the cauldron body. I've noticed that the symbols haven't covered the cauldron entirely. Perhaps when it gathers enough soul energy to create the symbols and fill the blank on the surface of the cauldron, something magical will happen. Hearing her, Shi Yang looked pensive. He nodded discreetly. He guessed the same thing. If this divine weapon had a tool spirit, it was going to be dormant because of serious damages. Otherwise, it wouldn't have set the trap to capture more souls of creatures. That way, it could gather the energy it needed to wake up. Let's secure this secret first. All of a sudden, the ring on Moshe's wrist sparkled continuously. She screamed and then explained to Shi Yang, it's the token that the Dragon Lizard clan has issued. The tokens can sense each other. Someone is coming. I think they're headed to the Dragon Lizard clan like us. Yeah. Dragon Lizard has attracted a lot of people living outside to come this time. Our Heavenly Eye clan is just a small party, said Iveline's. This immense sea of stars has so many territories and various species. There are many races I haven't seen or heard about before. If you don't visit the sea domain of nihility, you will never know the endless mysteries of the universe. You will never see so many different high-level creatures. We don't need to conceal it. It will disguise itself, said Audrey faintly. As soon as she finished, the asteroid underneath them released a sucking force and gathered some rocks to fill the gap. It became a normal rock shortly after. Look ahead of us, Moshe said. She looked gingerly. Shi Yang's mind flickered. He transformed back to his human form. He looked like an ordinary man without anything strange on his body. Shortly after, a massive blue glass ball emerged ahead of them. That glass ball was so huge. It was much bigger than the asteroid they were riding. That glass ball had a blue cover and it contained seething seawater. There were so many palaces built in the seawater where many beautiful men and women were moving back and forth. That glass ball was like a super battleship. Those elegant and graceful creatures looked similar to human beings. However, they were all slender and slim. Their bodies emitted water energy fluctuations. They could breathe freely while moving in the water inside the glass ball. They looked pretty relaxed. Members of the water tribe. From a distance, Ivlines exhaled in relief. He smiled. The water tribe isn't a combative tribe. Unless you provoke them, they won't attack people proactively. The members of this clan are beautiful. They all cultivate water power Upanishad. This tribe has the best relationship with the dragon lizard clan. They look similar to the sea tribe in our place, mumbled Audrey. It's normal, Moshe smiled and explained. Usually, the absolute beginning creatures can't create creatures from nothing. They got the models, anyway. Perhaps the races that the absolute beginning creature had created in your desolate territory exist in the world outside the sea domain of nihility. As far as I know, many people that come from different territories could be from one race. Oh, right. In the sea domain of nihility, the human clan is also the clan with the biggest population. They can mate with any other race and it can result in a new race. The human clan's reproduction and blending ability are acknowledged as the strongest in this entire universe. I don't know if it's true that most of the races have a similar appearance to the human race. Anyway, you can tell from some small details. For example, our clan has one extra eye compared to human clan. The water tribe has more water in their bodies, and they cultivate water power Upanishad. It's so, Shiyang was surprised. Human clan also had the biggest population in the star areas like Raging Flame Star area and Agate Star area. Their adaptive ability to the given circumstances was surprising. They could endure and adapt to any condition. At the same time, their reproductive rate was high with the super powerful fusing ability. In any area, the human clan had always accounted for a large portion of the population. It seemed like Desolate hadn't created the human clan in the desolate territory from nothing. It had referred to the characteristics of the human clan out there, indeed. Strictly speaking, Shiyang's body was the mix between the human clan and the immortal demon clan. However, after his realm had reached a profound level, he completely replaced his blood and become a real immortal demon warrior. After that complete transformation, he couldn't even tell what race he belonged to. While he was contemplating, the asteroid underneath his feet still moved forward quickly. It aimed directly at the glass ball of the water tribe. Without an external force to interfere, it was going to bump into the glass ball directly. Chapter 1367 Ming Hong. Chapter 1367 Ming Hong. Audrey's sharp sense told her that something was wrong. Her face became serious and her eyes twinkled. Shiyang, this situation isn't good. At this moment, the members of the Heavenly Eye clan hadn't recognized the complicated situation. They thought that Shiyang and Audrey had driven the asteroid approaching the glass ball of the water tribe to talk to them. What? Shiyang woke up from his thoughts. He looked baffled. Audrey pointed at the rock underneath and the glass palaces of the water tribe in front of them, wincing. We're about to make impact. Listening to her, Shiyang was frightened. He became so tense and grave. You guys can't control this asteroid? Moshe could see that detail. Her face grimaced immediately. Are we about to hit them? While she was talking, the asteroid didn't subside and was grumblingly dashing toward the water tribe's glass ball. The beautiful people of the water tribe were still smiling and talking. They didn't consider Shiyang's asteroid. When the rock was approaching, they smiled brightly when they saw the Heavenly Eye members. Because they knew the others, they thought that Iveline's group wanted to come and say hello. This was until they found that the asteroid was pretty close to them and didn't reduce its speed. It was still dashing at a breakneck speed toward them. The beautiful people of the water tribe discolored and screamed in panic. At this moment, the asteroid Shi Yang was riding was very close to them. Even if the water tribe wanted to avoid it, it was too late. We can't hit them, Ivelines cried. Although the water tribe is tender and friendly, they are really tough. Those people have a good relationship with Dragon Lizard Clan. If we offend them, I'm afraid we won't be able to enter Dragon Lizard Clan's territory more. Shi Yang's eyes turned crimson abruptly. An immense energy arose from his head. Shortly after, the nearest asteroids around were pulled and it created a barrier between them and the water tribe's palace. Watch out! Protect yourself, cried Shi Yang. Ivelines, Audrey, and the others didn't think too much. They created a light protection and gathered the energy in their bodies to counter the destructive energy when the impact occurred. However, they were dumbstruck when they saw what happened. At the critical moment when the three-legged jade cauldron was about to hit an asteroid, a weak wisp of energy emerged. Right after that, the asteroid they were riding trembled and made a swift turn to avoid the big rock in front of them. The members of the Heavenly Eye clan and the water tribe sweated in fear. They still looked panicked. They understood that when the asteroid with the jade cauldron inside hit the asteroid around the glass palace of the water tribe, the shockwaves of the explosion were able to result in an extreme loss to both sides. The explosion that occurred when the asteroids impacted was something that even the Immortal Realm experts couldn't stand, especially with such a short distance. Adams and Ivelines turned ashen. They knew that when they impacted, they couldn't endure it. The fragments of the explosion were going to crush them into powder. Fortunately, what they had worried about didn't happen. They were so anxious, standing on the asteroid, which was gradually drifting toward the glass ball of the water tribe. At this moment, the glass ball was flying fast like a frightened little girl trying to run away from the bully. The water tribe tried to lengthen the distance between them. They all thought that Shi Yang's group was crazy. At the same time, a handsome gentleman flew out of the ball, his face cold. He floated above the other's asteroid, asking, "Are you crazy, people from the Heavenly Eye clan? Do you want to fight against us? Why did you act so wild like that?" Ivelines looked sour. He hurried to bend his body to greet the man, speaking, "I'm so sorry. We suddenly lost the control of this asteroid. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so tense. You see, at our realms, if we hit you, we wouldn't survive. We're not crazy." Ivelines and the man from the water tribe were using another language to communicate, which Audrey and Shi Yang couldn't understand. What are they talking about? Audrey used the language of the desolate territory to ask. You guys understand only the language of the desolate territory. It's really difficult to communicate with other people in the sea domain. If you don't mind, I'll share my language seal with you. You just need to use your soul to grab it. How does it sound? Moshe smiled. Don't worry. Sharing languages has no risk. I open it and you guys just need to let your soul shroud it. No problem, Audrey nodded to Shi Yang and said, extracting memories isn't a big deal to our Imperial Dark Tribe. I also know many languages of the rural area by using the method that she has mentioned. All right, Shi Yang looked calm. He understood that it was just a small trick. Moshe's third eye twitched as she released a soul magnetic field. In the next moment, two dim light dots emerged from her eyes. Those dim light dots were memory seals. As long as they had it in their head, they could understand many languages used in outer space. Audrey and Shi Yang released their soul consciousness to cover the two dim dots that contained the languages used in the sea domain. They pulled them into their heads and made them a part of their memories. Many different languages moved and were implanted in their heads like electrical signals. They became a part of their souls. Then, Shi Yang and Audrey could understand the conversation between Ivelines and the man from the water tribe. They were using a simple but archaic language, which was the easiest language in outer space. Most of the races working in the universe knew this common language. Oh, you speak the language of desolate territory. Are you from desolate territory? Suddenly, the handsome man of the water tribe was startled while talking Ivelines. He turned to look at Shi Yang and Audrey. All of a sudden, he looked emotional. Yes, we're from desolate territory. Why are you so surprised? Asked Audrey. There was an expert from desolate territory. He used to cross our territory. He had a good relationship with our water tribe. However, he left later and an expert of the Soul Clan had captured him. That expert from desolate territory had given his favor to me. Unfortunately, the Soul Clan is too domineering. I can't help him. The handsome man from the water tribe sighed and looked lost. He studied Audrey for a while and then said surprisedly, "You and that man should be from the same race in desolate territory." Oh! Audrey's eyes turned bright. "Do you know his name?" "Ming Hong." "His name is Ming Hong," said the man. Audrey was shaken and her eyes brightened up. She was in disbelief. "Oh my. I didn't expect it to be him. It turns out that he's here all the time. Who is he?" Shi Yang sounded surprised. "Do you remember that I used to tell you that my Imperial Dark Tribe's records say that our precursor used to visit the sea domain and find aliens who he couldn't communicate with because of the different languages?" asked Audrey. Shi Yang nodded. "He's the one who made those records. He should be my ancestor. According to my mother, tens of thousands of years ago before Bloodthirsty, it was the time of our Imperial Dark Tribe in our galaxy. Because of Bloodthirsty, our Imperial Dark Tribe started declining. In that era, our Imperial Dark Tribe had lost many experts. Some of them went missing too. I heard that since Precursor Ming Hong knew he wasn't Bloodthirsty's match, he had escaped to the sea domain of Nihility to cultivate ascetically and waited for the chance to save Imperial Dark Tribe. Unfortunately, he had never come back. We thought that he had left, for a long time. He was the one with the deepest knowledge of the sea domain of Nihility in our tribe. He had documented his experiences in the sea domain of Nihility. In fact, Ming Hong was the first teacher of my uncle Ming Hao. Mother told me that he had named him Ming Hao. He was my grandfather's cousin. When he was in our Imperial Dark Tribe, he was also an outstanding warrior, indeed." Audrey slowly explained. In the end, her face turned stern. "If we can find Ming Hong, perhaps we will find the way home." Shi Yang's eyes brightened. According to Audrey, Ming Hong was the sage of desolate territory who had entered the sea domain of Nihility several times and had come back safely. Of course, he would know how to return to desolate territory. If they could find him, they would know the way to go home. My advice to you. Do not think about it, frowned the man of the water tribe. He's captured by an expert of the Soul Clan. He's now one of the 9 great brutal souls of that expert. In this vast sea of stars, the Soul Clan is too domineering. That expert is terrifying too. I don't dare to provoke him, let alone kids like you two. Pausing for a while, he snorted and then said, "Considering that you're from the same territory as him, I'll forgive you for your offense this time. Still, my advice to you, forget what I've told you. Don't provoke that expert from the Soul Clan. I heard that he'll come here this time too. He's an old friend of Dragon Lizard. You two should stay away from them." Then, he stopped caring about Shi Yang's group and returned to the glass palace with a cold face. He ordered his tribal members to continue the journey. "What is the Soul Clan? Is it very fierce?" Shi Yang looked at the members of the Heavenly Eye Clan. The other 3 nodded with a heavy face. Ivelines answered, "This vast sea of stars had millions of species. Anyway, they don't have the same competences. The Soul Clan is one of the 7 strongest clans that the entire universe has acknowledged. Compared to the Soul Clan, our Heavenly Eye Clan is just a minor race." "How about the Dragon Lizard Clan?" Shi Yang asked again. Lizard, the ancestor of the Dragon Lizard Clan, was gone for a long time. Currently, Dragon Lizard, the 2nd generation, hasn't reached the territory ancestor level yet. Thus, the Dragon Lizard Clan is just a 2nd-class clan. However, the Soul Clan, the race that had appeared together with our Heavenly Eye Clan after the Absolute Beginning era, has an expert at the territory ancestor level. They got the expert who can control the dark energy. The foundation of the Soul Clan isn't something that ordinary people can compete with, said Ivelines with respect and admiration. Chapter 1368, The 7 Great Races. Chapter 1368, The 7 great races. Soul Clan? 7 great races? It seems that this vast sea of stars has so many things that we don't know yet. Can you tell us more? Shi Yang was watching the large glass ball of the water tribe floating and bobbing like a massive buoy and drifting forward. Slowly, it accelerated. As he had just arrived at this place, he had a shadow understanding of much more common knowledge of the sea domain of nihility. Without Iveline's useful information, they would have encountered unexpected troubles in their journey. Thus, before they reached the Dragon Lizard Clan's territory, he must have a good grasp of this area. I beg for your favor, said Ivelines. What's that? Shi Yang furrowed his brows. I can give you a thorough answer of what you are suspicious of. I can tell you everything I know. I'm begging you for one favor, that if you reach the territory ancestor level one day, please take one member of our Heavenly Eye clan to be your disciple. Ivelines looked tense and anxious as he gazed at Shi Yang. The Heavenly Eye clan in this vast sea of stars was just a third-class clan. Their territory was filled with dangers and their people had to live in harsh conditions. Moreover, around their territory was where many powerful races lived. They often had disputes, but the Heavenly Eye clan didn't have advantages in fighting. Normally, if one clan wanted to become stronger and get approval from the higher-level races, they had only one way to do that. They must have a real expert in their clan. Until now, the Heavenly Eye clan never had any existence at the territory ancestor level. It was the main reason why they could only stand in the back of the line. To reach the territory ancestor level, one had to know the dark energy. However, the experts with the dark energy would never share its magnificent power. Unless they had to kneel in front of some expert, they would have the chance to receive training and guidance from him to understand the truth of the dark energy. That way, they could eventually reach the territory ancestor level 2. To Ivelines, improving the capacity of his race was more important than anything else. At their third-class competence, it was going to be pretty hard for the Heavenly Eye clan to gain favor from the real experts. They couldn't enroll to become a disciple of the expert who controlled dark energy. And now, Shi Yang was their best option. Since Shi Yang's realm was still low now, if they bet on him, when he reached the territory ancestor level in the future, Ivelines could win big. He would finally have a chance for the Heavenly Eye clan to get in the line of the top species. Of course, they had to assume that Shi Yang could break through to that level. Otherwise, his support would be in vain. Ivelines was smart. He knew that even if he failed, he could neutralize the relationship with Shi Yang. When they could eliminate one enemy, it was a big fortune for the entire Heavenly Eye clan. Hearing him, Adam's and Moshe's eyes sparkled. They were so excited that their bodies quivered. They bowed to Shi Yang, their faces begging. At this moment, Moshe finally knew Iveline's vision and she understood why Adams, the one with the small, witted schemes, would always listen to Iveline's in big matters. If Iveline's deed succeeded today, it would become the great fortune to the Heavenly Eye clan. Moshe now respected and admired her senior a lot. Well, the future is still far ahead. I'm at incipient God realm only. Don't you think it's too vague to bet on me until I reach the territory ancestor level? Shi Yang was surprised. Ivelines gave a forced smile and said honestly, with our Heavenly Eye clan's general competences, we would never be eligible to be chosen by the real territory ancestor experts. It's sad. You can at least give us hope, although it's a vague dream. As long as we have hope, it will be all right. Okay. Shi Yang pondered for a few seconds and then agreed resolutely, I pledge that if I one day reach the territory ancestor level, I will accept one member of your Heavenly Eye clan to be my disciple. I will teach him the truth of powers and make him understand power Upanishads thoroughly. Ivelines, Adams, and Moshe bowed to thank Shi Yang in their Heavenly Eye clan's special way. They looked excited as if they saw their grand future. Now, you should tell me more useful information, urged Shi Yang. As you wish. Ivelines wore a respectful face. While the asteroid was heading to the Dragon Lizard clan's territory, he told Shi Yang everything he knew about the mysteries of the Soul Clan and the 7 Great Race, about all sorts of secrets of the territory, and some rumors about the absolute beginning creatures. Through Ivelines's introduction, Shi Yang knew that the terrifying battle between the absolute beginning creatures had ended the absolute beginning era. After that, the mysterious world had given birth to many species. They didn't have giant bodies like absolute beginning creatures. However, when they cultivated to the utmost level, they could still reach the same level of power as the absolute beginning creatures. Later on, so many races had appeared and many of them were related to the absolute beginning creatures. For example, the dragon lizard clan was related to lizard and there were many more cases. Among so many species, many creatures weren't really powerful but had some marvelous power. The human clan, for example, had ordinary fighting competences and average foundations. However, they could interbreed with other races to create new living beings. Races in the universe had been ranked based on their power into first class, second class, and third class. There were countless third-class clans like the Heavenly Eye clan. There were dozens of second-class clans, but everybody had acknowledged the 7 strongest clans, including the Soul clan, the Mysterious Sky clan, the Dark Demon clan, the Ancient Monster clan, the Devouring clan, the Whitebone clan, and the Phantom clan. These 7 great races lived in different, big territories of the sea domain of nihility. They became the overlord of their areas. Each of these clans had their special abilities. The Soul clan, the Mysterious Sky clan, the Dark Demon clan, the Ancient Monster clan, the Devouring clan, the Whitebone clan, and the Phantom clan were the strongest clans in this sea of stars. Everybody knew that. Those clans had experts at the territory ancestor level. Aside from the territory ancestor experts, they also had many experts at the immortal realm that were close to the territory ancestor level. They had a strict scale and criteria to rank the experts. The small, weak races had to admire and respect the warriors of the big races. Many second-class or third-class clans had to depend on them. They considered the relationship they could form with the big races their glory. At the same time, the strong races also tried to gather more potential second-class races to their side. For example, the clansman of the Soul clan that the Waterman had mentioned had a good relationship with Dragon Lizard. This time, he had crossed millions of miles to visit Dragon Lizard and he was going to try to persuade Dragon Lizard to strengthen the relationship between the Dragon Lizard clan and the Soul clan. The best scenario was that they could be officially united. However, the Soul clan wanted to make the Dragon Lizard clan follow their league and become their vassal. Thus, the Dragon Lizard clan would be placed under the Soul clan's protection. Also, when needed, the Dragon Lizard clan would have to help the Soul clan too. After Ivelines had told him about the competencies of the Soul clan, Shi Yang couldn't hide his fear. He turned to Audrey. If we meet that guy, we should try to hold it down. Even if we make a mess, we can't do anything worthy. According to Ivelines, after the immortal realm, it was the territory ancestor level. The creatures from the absolute beginning era that still existed were all at the territory ancestor level. It meant that the Soul clan had at least 1 or 2 intimidating members at Desolate and Hui's level. This clan's foundation was unimaginable, indeed. Perhaps, when Hui and Desolate fought against the Soul clan, they wouldn't gain the upper hand, especially when Desolate and Hui hadn't fully recovered yet and Desolate's body was still detached. Shi Yang and Audrey had seen Hui's power with their own eyes. This sort of terrifying power was like their worst nightmare. And at that time, Hui hadn't recovered fully when they fought. Thinking about the characters at Hui's level in the Soul clan, Shi Yang and Audrey felt their scalps become numb as they felt so small. Don't worry. I know how to behave. I'm not foolish, Audrey pulled a bitter face. While they were listening to Iveline's introduction of the races in the universe, the asteroid underneath them was flying fast. They also encountered many aliens from different races on the way. At the end of the asteroid current, they saw a massive planet. That planet looked pretty strange with innumerable caves and dents. It seemed like they had hollowed out the entire planet. Dragon Lizard Star is the Dragon Lizard clan's territory. In the sea domain of nihility, there is no complete planet. Dragon Lizard Star was formed by countless broken crystals. Dragon Lizard had used his supernatural power to gather them and pile them up. After so many years, they've become what we see now, explained Ivelines. Shi Yang's eyes brightened. He found that even though Dragon Lizard Star was so big, More than a dozen times bigger than Grace mainland, this planet had countless slits and pits on the surface. They were the vestiges left after the asteroids were put together. Also, he saw many dark, bottomless caves. Dragon Lizard Star's surface was yellow-brown and there was a suction force emitted from so many caves. From his position, Shi Yang saw many asteroid currents drifting toward the caves on Dragon Lizard Star. They were like open mouths trying to swallow all the free matter in the sea of stars. How big is that dragon lizard? What does it mean by having a meal? Is he swallowing all of those asteroids? When they saw Dragon Lizard Star and what Evelyn's had told them, Audrey was dumbstruck. Dragon Lizard's body is massive. Yeah. It's many times bigger than the asteroid we are riding. However, he's not the entire planet. He stays deep inside the planet while using his power Upanishad to draw the asteroids. He doesn't really eat those rocks. He absorbs the energy inside them. He can find and absorb that sort of energy. Ordinary warriors can't do that. After he's done with the asteroids, they will become powder or small rocks and pile up on the planet, becoming part of it. Or, he will throw them directly to the area where there is nothing. Evelyn smiled and introduced more marvelous features to the others. We will visit Dragon Lizard Star. The members of the Dragon Lizard clan will welcome us by the caves down there. They will take us to the festival. We don't need to do much here. What should we do with this? Audrey was bewildered. Looking at the rock they were riding, she looked dejected. The three-legged jade cauldron hid inside this asteroid. They didn't know what it was besides the fact that it was a divine weapon from the absolute beginning era. If it fell into Dragon Lizard's stomach, would it be really bad? It wasn't that they weren't predestined with this divine weapon. It was more important that they couldn't tame it or keep it. Just let it go. I'll leave a mark on it. Then, we can only see what the mighty heaven wants, said Shi Yang resolutely. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,